Does he have it?
Medeiros is going to get it.
They're going to toss it. They haven't got it.
He's on the outside line though, going into the fastest corner on the circuit. Surely this can't work.
Dominic Ligner has got a sensational run outside line now though for the heavy braking zone. Around the outside goes the Audi R8.
Look how much Miller's caught back into play. Exactly, Miller's just like trouble. He's not on second and change. All of a sudden, Miller's back in play.
Can Barry do it? Big Barry's going to do it. Big Barry!
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome once again to the virtual World Sportscar Championship live from the Ardennes in Belgium. We're at the world-famous circuit, the Spa-Francorchamps. Joining me in the booth this evening, of course, our lovely man James on the production, and Michael David joining me in the booth on commentary. We will bring you all the action here this evening live from Spa-Francorchamps. You can see the 5th round of the season. Next round is Le Mans, and this one is an important one because this will qualify the drivers who will drive today and who've driven in the 4 rounds previous to this. They are qualified to be a lead driver, and you have to be a lead driver to get your team into the Le Mans 20 or 24, 48, 4.8 hours, excuse me, to 4.8 hours. And this one is an important one because this is the last round that you can qualify for that. So looking at the schedule then, it's round number 5 at Spa-Francorchamps, the 22nd of April, 3rd of June. Like I just said, the 4.8 hours of Le Mans. Watkins Glen on the 17th of June, 60 laps there instead of 16 minutes. A bit of a different one compared to all the others. Then the 15th of July, we have the 60 minutes of the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Monza on the 22nd of July, 26th of August. We have Road America, then Fuji on the 9th of September, Indianapolis on 23rd of September, then Road Atlanta on the 21st of October, and then we round off the season in Bahrain on the 11th of November with an 80-minute race there. This is the track then for this evening. Of course, La Source, the first corner, a tricky one that sets you up for about, 40 seconds of full throttle experience down Eau Rouge, Radion onto the Camel, straight into Le Comp. An important section, that one. And of course, the orange zone runs all the way down to the exit of No Name turn number 9. So it's going to be important for the drivers to stay clean all the way through that first the first sector and the first part of sector number 2. The standings for this evening, or coming into this evening, in LMGT3 AM look as follows. Becky Ellie in first on 64 points in the Acura NSX GT3, ahead of Stefan Miller in second, and Eugene Mazur in third. 4 points is the gap between the two at the top, then 9 points further down to Eugene Mazur. Ed Jones in fourth, Felipe Marazzi in fifth, Brendan McVie in sixth, Matt Boos in seventh, in 8th it is Greg Pullen and Mike Bruce in 9th. Stuart Barge all the way down in P10 on 26 points. Tom Montoy in P11 on 23 points. Vinicius D'Oliveira in 12th on 19 points. 13th is James Bowders on 17 points, together with Peter Meyer in 14th. 15th Stephen Boos. So he's, of course, together with Matt and Mike Boos in the Trash Panda Racing team. They're leading in the team championship. And then Adam Gray rounds off the 2 drivers for Reptile Racing, second in the team championship. Francisco Costa in 17th, ahead of Ronald Hagenaars in P18. Wes Dyer in P19, P20 for Mac Dunlop. In 21st, Gino Bardelli, Larry Thomas and Mike Olsen, all 3 drivers on half a point in LMGT3 AM. In LMGT3 Pro, it's Vasilis Katerinakis in P1, leading the way on 59 points. 2 points ahead of Johnny Gutierrez. Luciano Ichazo in P3, a further 3 points behind the top 2. JT Tammy in P4, 5 points behind the top 3. Elisio Neto in 5th. 6th is Sachin Sobers. Brandon Johns in P7, ahead of Jamie Zolecki in P8. Vinicius Gonçalves in P9, have John Maher in P10. 16 drivers, round off the LMGT3 Pro standings. James Walker, Alec King, Luis Lemos, Adrian Rice and William Novak, and Lewis Stephens in P16. The team championship in the Hypercar AM class, Guilherme Benke in 1st there, Wayne Hutchinson in 2nd, Felipe Henrique in 3rd, ahead of Barry DeMarzo in P4. Also Barry DeMarzo and Felipe Henrique, of course, in the team championship together for HPD. Guilherme Benke, of course, leading the way for Stuart Haas Racing, together with William Miller in 7th on 32 points. So that team, of course, carrying that team is Guilherme on 67 in 1st. Maximilian Putravki in 5th, ahead of Koen Garling in P6. And in P8, in the last place in the Hypercar AM Championship, it's Risto Corpi on 12 points, 20 points behind P7. Then the biggest grid and the biggest championship we have in the VWSC, Daniel Kirby leading the way for the Hypercar Pro class. Maya Rose in P2, ahead of Tom Lane in P3. Warder Bryan in P4, ahead of John Ewan in P5. Of course, those 2 drivers, Daniel Kirby and John Ewan, leading the team championship for CMS Pro team. Then we have Warder Bryan and Bradley Sellers for the team Rookie Monsters in P2. Bradley Sellers all the way down in P10 for that team. Timon Suvik in 6th, ahead of Brian Hall in P7. Ross Smith and George Angelidis for HPD in the Acura ARX 06 in 8th and 9th on 27 and 19 points respectively. We've had Bradley Sellers, we've talked about that previously, for Team Rookie Monsters. Cameron Barker in P11, ahead of Magnus Dahlgren in P12. Jason Whitehead in P13 on 11 points, ahead of Chai Chen and Eric Monnier on 9 points together. Alex Schultz rounding off the team SKS Motorsports in 4th in the team championship. He's in 16th on 7 points. His teammate Timon Suvik, of course, up all the way in P6 on 39 points. 4 points for Matthew Overton, P17. Norm Graff in P18. Gilles Lalonde in P19 on 1.5 points. And then 2 drivers on half a point in 20th and 21st. Sander Tolman and Ben Borman rounding off the biggest grid we have in the Hypercar Pro class. Going to the tires that the drivers will have for this evening, it will be a soft and medium for the Hypercars and a wet, which we might see in use because, Michael, we know that here in the Ardennes, everywhere in Belgium it can be 30 degrees, but here in the Ardennes it can be 11 degrees and raining cats and dogs, because the Ardennes, for some reason, it has its own climate in Belgium. The GTs will have the soft, the mediums and the hards to use, and of course a wet tire too. So no car will have an intermediate, so it's going to be either a wet or a dry tires for the drivers this evening. Quickly going over the challenges that the drivers will face here this evening. The fuel strategy will be an important one. How many times do you make stop? Of course, 60 minutes. We expect about 2 stops maximum for some of the LMP cars, the Hypercars, and 1 stop could be done in the GTs. Tire wear is something that drivers will have to take into their mind too. We'll have to keep in mind for that. It'll be even more difficult in the rain. How are you going to manage those dry tires on a wet track, or how are you going to manage the wet tires on a drying track? You're going to have to find some wet patches. It's going to be interesting to see that happening too. A lot of chatter before we went to qualifying, but Michael, it's time to, I think, bring you into. Welcome to the lovely Ardennes here in Belgium.
Yeah, Dan, glad to be here with you. I'm really excited about this race. I love Spa. It's a great track. As we know, it could be raining in one part of the track and be completely dry in another. We've been watching this practice session here for a little while now. Looks like there's a pretty dry line that's coming through. So that should be interesting. I think we're going to see a lot of the cars on slick tires. I don't think we're going to start off with any wet tires, but that could change with a moment's notice.
With the 201s that I see at the moment on my timing screen, it looks like they are still on wet tires. I don't know if that are just dry times. The quickest lap time we've seen here, well, in the server yet is 1:57, so that does lead me to believe that the drivers are on dry tires. Was that contact between Wayne Hutchinson and the Porsche? Looked like it, but yeah, luckily for those two, still practice. But it looks like they're all on dry tires, but the track's still very greasy, so not up to spec with where the quickest lap times have been so far.
Yeah, definitely not. That track is definitely still wet. I do think we are starting to see a little bit of a drying line, but everybody being on the dry tires right now, I think that's what we're going to see at the race start here. And this is going to be really interesting. This is going to be that qualifier for Le Mans. And also, I mean, we know that we were talking a little bit beforehand, there's going to be a lot of drivers that are going to be dealing with penalties today. So it's going to be very interesting how this is going to work itself out.
And especially, of course, when we're in practice, about 8 minutes of practice left before we go into qualifying. Something that is going to be super difficult for the drivers to manage too is when you do make that switch to dry tires, going offline to overtake a slower class car like a GT, or maybe in your own class a slower driver, it's going to be very tricky because going offline, it is still going to be wet. It's not dry throughout the whole track, as I think saw in Acura backwards there.
Yeah, that was definitely quite the moment there. I think the hypercar that we just saw just got very lucky that they didn't get caught up in that. But that's going to be part of what we're going to have to see here is, with multi-class racing, you got these hypercars that are obviously going to be going so much faster than the GT3s. They get offline a little bit like we just saw just now, and they're going to, lock a brake. They're going to lose a little bit of grip, and that's going to make things very dicey. It's going to be very, very greasy as soon as you get off that dry line.
Especially, of course, when you go offline and you cut back online, the tires will not be up to spec immediately. Yeah, it's something that's going to be very interesting to, of course, look at. Then, the man we're looking at the moment is Daniel Kirby leading the way in the current practice session on a 201.7. Now, like I just said, the quickest lap time we've seen so far, a 1:57. So quite a way off that. This is also the case of a drying track, a greasy track. But it looks like for the moment, all drivers are on dry tires. Going to be looking at dry tires with the drying line. And especially this evening, it could be a special occasion, Michael, with the amount of wins that in total could be picked up.
Yeah. We know Ewan is very close. If he takes one more class win, I believe that puts him at 76, which would be the current record for VWSC.
Yeah, for VWSC overall wins.
Yeah.
You take all seasons together, not in one season, all seasons together in the complete history of VWSC, he could be the man with the most victories, which would be very, very special. And it could be a very special occasion here this evening.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something that John Ewan is going for. As we watch Daniel Kirby still putting up the fastest time, he looks like and he is tied for the lead in the race wins, as we're getting a little clarification there. So it's going to be between John Ewan and Daniel Kirby, who is able to break that tie and become the leader in race wins.
Now, we know that Daniel Kirby overall, in that Peugeot of his, super quick, and especially a track like this, where the speeds are so important down that long straight. Of course, you have La Source, the exit out of there through Radion or Rouge into Le Combe. That 40 seconds, I think it is, the full throttle time. That's where this car will be gaining most of his time, because it doesn't have rear wing. Most of its downforce comes from undercar downforce, so it basically gets sucked to the ground. So so there's no overbody downforce, which will mean that it's way quicker in a straight line.
Yeah, that's definitely going to give it an advantage, but we know that this is a track that has 2 sections that are very low downforce, high speed oriented, and then that middle sector is just very downforce oriented, and you have to be very careful in that middle sector. So you see a lot of cars, you know, they might run a lower downforce to try to, you know, get that higher speed on the top end, but it's more of a give and take here at Spa. So it's going to be very interesting. You might see these cars, you know, very quick in a straight line, but it's going to be very, very, very slippery when you come to the middle sector here.
And then especially because we have some different cars here this evening. We have the Peugeot, the Porsche, the Acura, which I think is going to be one of the quickest cars. But the Porsche we've seen over and over again. It is so economy friendly. Just the fact that it can do one pit stop, just half an hour, or maybe 32, 33 minutes. It has such a big advantage, especially with a long pit lane as this one, as Daniel Kirby gets very close to the back of the Acura too. Also something that the drivers will be watching out for. Managing that traffic going to be so important here this evening, not only during the drying period of the track, but also just during the whole race. This is not a track that lends for some good overtaking spots, especially to the pit path at the backstretch after double gauche, double left-hander. And double gauche, some interesting facts. It is called double gauche because it's double left-hander in French. And I just heard in my ear, it's Pouhon. But that corner, as so many corners here at Spa-Francorchamps, have about 12 different names. So one person says double gauche, one person says Pouhon. So many different names, especially with no name. That, of course, the left-hander before that. Some people say it's Speaker Corner. Some people say it's no name. This track, especially with corners like that, has so many different names. So whatever you're going with, basically, it's all correct here this evening. Double gauche, Pouhon, Speaker's Corner, no name, it's all correct. As long as you keep it to that.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. This track has so many different ways to pronounce everything. I don't speak very good French, so I'm gonna let you handle those pronunciations. I'm gonna go ahead and follow up with Pouhon, but yeah, no, this track, it's just such a wonderful place to drive. I love just getting in any car and just, you know, whatever you want to do, just go out there and just, you know, turn laps on Spa. It's such a nice way to kind of relieve stress when you're just kind of just out the drive. But that is going to be such a different situation for these drivers today with these multi-class racing, with these wet, you know, areas on the track when they're going to have to go onto, you know, a wet patch to get around, you know, a slower car on these slicks, because we're all seeing them on slicks. It's just gonna be so slippery. We saw Daniel Kirby in the Peugeot a few minutes ago, and you could tell that you know, that steering wheel was just he was all over the place, just doing everything he could to keep the wheel straight, and he was fighting it tooth and nail. So this is going to be very interesting, and I think we're gonna see. Yeah, that was a big off there. Walter coming off there, and he's able to clear the GT3 cars safely, so no real harm, no foul there, but it's going to be interesting, and I think we're going to see quite a few close calls tonight, if not a couple incidents.
Well, of course, something that we do know coming into this round is that in the 2020 and the 2021 season, Spa was one of the races with a lot of DNFs, and you would think where we were last time, of course at Long Beach, that would be a track with the wall so close, that would be a track with a lot of DNFs. But especially on this track, because it's a track where if you do want to make an overtake, it's either a do or die action, because the only real good overtaking opportunity you have is either into the bus stop chicane, because that's a hard break, because we're coming out of Blanchiment, flat in every car we have this evening, in the right conditions. Remember that, in the right conditions, because I think we just saw, Timon Suvic have an off moment too, just about a lap to go. So it's not an easy corner, but in the right conditions, that is easy flat in these hypercars. In the GTs, it's just on edge, but especially that bus stop chicane is a good overtaking opportunity. But as far as I'm concerned, it's either Pouhon, where you never put a car up the inside, nor do you put a car around the outside there, because if you do that, it's basically a recipe of disaster.
Yeah, that's an easy off track if you're lucky, and worse if you're not. So, yeah, you're right. There's only a couple real solid overtaking points on this track. So we see him coming into the bus stop chicane right now, and we see Timon Suvik going into the pits. But qualifying or practice is about to finish here. We're, I believe, about to jump into qualifying.
Qualifying, of course. The GTs will go out first. They have 10 minutes of qualifying to go out, and then after that, the Hypercars will have their chance to put their quickest lap in. It will not be LMGT3 and LMGT3 Pro. Separately, both of those classes go together. It is just the different car classes. So it's only LMGT3 AM and Pro. They go together. And then 10 minutes after that, when the timer hits the 10-minute mark, the Hypercars are allowed to go out. So that's Hypercar Pro and Hypercar AM. Something that I do want to touch on is, well, Wayne Hutchinson. He picked up a second overall at Long Beach as a Hypercar AM driver. His closest competitor, I think, Guilherme Rebenche, he was all the way down in 16th overall, and I think even behind the GT3 leader. So yeah, he was quite far down. So the only person he was really competing with was either the driver behind him, which was Brian Hall, or Walter De Bruyn, who of course won overall last week.
Yeah, that is definitely a great job there by the Hypercar AM class there. Just be able to jump up all the way into, second place there overall. That's just absolutely outstanding. So we watch these cars coming through now. It's going to take a moment. This is a long track. It's a long 2-minute lap time in the Hypercars right now on the wet. So expect it to be, well, yeah, it does look like it's drying out pretty much. But yeah, this is still going to be quite a long lap time here for these cars to get around and start putting some time in. So even though they have 10 minutes to put in their qualifying laps, it's going to be do or die. Every single lap is going to count here. It's a very long track, so you can't make any mistakes. You have to take every lap like it's going to be your only and last lap, because if something were to happen, you just don't have the time to make up for mistakes here.
Now, Becky is an interesting one, Michael, because for about, I think, the last 2 or 3 broadcasts, I've been pronouncing her last name completely wrong. And there was even one broadcast where I was convinced that I was saying it right. I was saying Eli the whole time, and I don't know what other names we had for it, but this week, as far as I know, and we might need Becky to come in and confirm that again, but I do get it right. It's Becky Ellie.
Ellie, yeah. Yeah, I can see how you say Eli, but yeah, no, Becky Ellie. It's definitely a correct pronunciation there, as we see her coming through here in that Acura. And that's a great car. A lot of people seem to be very comfortable in the Acura, so I'm really excited to see what it can do here at Spa. She goes off a little bit. That's going to slow some traffic down behind her. It's definitely going to be a very, very tough for these cars to pick their spot on their laps here. You want to get a little bit of distance from the car ahead of you. You want to keep a little distance from the car behind you. So they are going to try to space out, but at the same time, when you come to these longer stretches, you kind of want to use that draft as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see what these cars do. As we see another car going off there in the background, and that is definitely going to be Jamie Selecki there. That's definitely going to be a very, very, very tough situation for a lot of these drivers to keep their cars pointed the right way tonight. Ooh, there's a big snap there.
The changing weather, which you've pointed on numerous times. Also, something that you have to know is the fact that there are 2 servers here this evening. Becky Ellie going through turn 1. We're quickly going to go on the lap, or get together on the lap with Becky Ellie for through Blanchimont. Through Rouge and Radion, indeed. How can you forget the track that is closest to you? You forget the most famous corner in the racing almost. We've just gone through Rouge and Radion, coming into Le Comte now. This is an interesting corner. You want to get all the way over to the left, brake at the start of the curve, go down into second gear. Some drivers also keep it in third. It's a very interesting part of the track. This you want to be all the way over to the left, so you want to offer up that corner a little bit early on to get a good exit out of this one. Drive it into turn number 8, Rivage. Downhill braking, which is going to be tricky for Becky. She gets the car turned in a little bit offline. Never hit the right line through that corner. And through no name or speaker corner, whatever you want to call it. A little bit of oversteer in that Acura through Pooh on turn number 10 and 11. This is probably the most tricky one in these conditions. He's working that steering wheel as much as she can to try and keep that car pointing in the right direction and be as quick as possible. Up into 5th gear, now into Fagné, or the pit path, whatever you want to call it. Turn 12 and 13, all the way over to the right hand side here. Now, as quickly as possible, go over to the left for curve pull Frere. The last 2 real corners on this track. And we move into Blanchimont, turn 16, 17. And now it's full throttle all the way till the bus stop chicane, turn 18 and 19. Well, that will be completed for Becky Ellie. Now let's see if she's going to keep it flat through here. You have a little bit of runoff on the right hand side, not quite. Maybe just feeling the conditions out there, maybe just getting her confidence up, breaking into the bus stop chicane very late. Hit the first apex, set yourself up for another good exit, because you're going to need it. Who's out last usually with this sets the best lap time across the line for our leader in the AM Championship, and across the line she goes and takes that provisional pole position too. Now it's going to be interesting to see. She's going to go back to pit lane, so she herself thinks that going out again after that on fresh tires is the best way to go, instead of trying to burn up some fuel and feel the conditions out there. JT Tammy is leading the way in the pros at the moment. His lap time for JT Tammy, a 2 minutes 19.379. So a little behind Becky Ellie at the moment. She's actually leading the overall standings at the moment in the GT. So an AM driver leading overall there in the Acura.
And Becky Ellie is definitely putting in some solid laps. We know she's a fast driver. She's in the AM class, but we know she's a fast driver. We know she can handle the Acura, but as we were riding along, just like we saw with Daniel Kirby, it's very, very, very tough to keep these cars, you know, to keep that wheel as straight as you possibly can. These drivers are really struggling with keeping the car online, and they're really dealing with a lot of oversteer and understeer here. Mainly we were seeing understeer there with Becky, but yeah, just saw a lot of, you know, cranking the wheel way more than I felt like she should have, but she obviously knows what she's doing. She's leading the way here, so I'm going to let her drive and do her thing, because she clearly knows what she's doing better than I am. But yeah, as we see JT Tammy coming through here, he's got 2 purple sectors coming through. We'll see if he sets a 3rd, and he does. Going to the top of the timing tower. There you go. JT Tammy. Oh, and he got knocked down immediately.
Johnny Gutierrez is the one who jumped up into pole position at 2:16.7, and that, well, is about 1.7 seconds quicker than JT Tammy, so that's a huge gap. Most of that time, 1 in the middle sector, so that is a sector where you need the downforce on the car. So for some reason, Johnny Gutierrez got that downforce working and was still just as quick in a straight line as JT Tammy was. So maybe that Aston Martin for JT Tammy not quite doing the job in that middle sector. However, this track is improving with every lap the drivers turn. So also, the Hypercar drivers will be looking at these GT drivers too, Michael. See what they do, see how they run, see where the grip is too. Because usually on a track like this, the grip isn't in the usual spots because the track is just improving every time round. So it's going to take some time before the drivers will completely be back to their normal dry lines. But for the moment, it seems like Johnny Gutierrez has got it figured out.
We're going to go ahead and take a look at the table for the pros up here in the top left corner. JT Tammy, we know, is in 2nd place here, followed by Gant. Gutierrez coming through in 1st, and then you got Zalecki in 4th, Walker in 5th, Goncalves in 6th place there, and Katarnakas in 7th place. So we are seeing these times really starting to come through, and Gutierrez just really having a phenomenal flying lap there. JT is going to really have to push. He's got 2 green sectors, so he's going faster than he did the first time, but green sectors are only going to be personal bests. We know those purple sectors are what they're driving for and what they need here. So if he wants to jump up on the timing tower and take that pole back, he's going to have to put in a little bit faster time.
Now let's remember, the fact that you don't have to have purple sectors. If the last sector from GT Tammy was just a little bit slower than Johnny Gutierrez, and that's where he lost the time, then that's where you want to gain it. But we saw that the middle sector was the point where he was slower. So if he just improved by about half a second, and improved by about half a second in section number 1, then the gap will close. Across the line he goes. He doesn't put in too much of an improvement, just a little bit of an improvement, a couple of thousandths of a second, still on the 218.426 for JT Tammy. And Becky Ellie behind that is the first of the AM still. She's still in the lead of that class, putting in a purple sector time in sector number 1. 37.699 in section number 1. That's about as good as it gets here. We've seen that JT Tammy has put in a 37.593 in section number 1, but last that time around, JT Tammy a bit slower than Becky Ellie. So at the moment, Becky Ellie right up there with the pros again.
Yeah, that she's definitely having a phenomenal day so far. Obviously, we're still in qualifying, and it has reached that 10-minute time frame, so we're going to start seeing the hypercars start to come out. But yeah, no, Becky Ellie is just on fire and just showing exactly why she's leading that championship.
Well, leading a championship, as we know, Michael, is not a case of winning one race.
No.
It's a case of being as consistent as possible. And, well, Becky has just nailed that, absolutely nailed that so far in the first 4 rounds of the championship. And, well, she's going to be looking to do more of the same in this, in round number 5. A bit of traffic in the bus stop chicane, which will not help her lap time. 2 green sectors across the line. She will come to put in what will probably be another personal best lap time across the line. Yellow in sector number 4 or sector number 3 and 218.432, and that puts her just behind JT Tammy, about 6 thousandths of a second. So that's really close for a second position in the front row overall for Becky Ellie. She did really well there. Zalecki in 3rd place in the pro class. We're looking at Ross Smith now in the hypercars, because as you can see, qualifying is ticked over the 10-minute mark, so the hypercars will now begin to set their first lap times. And now, Michael, the quick boys are out on track.
Yeah, and it looks like that track really has dried out, so I think we're going to see some sub 2-minute time frames here, probably within the 2nd or 3rd lap. But I really do think that these boys are going to be absolutely flying. You see them a little bit offline there, but it looks like the grip is coming in very, very nicely, so I'm expecting some very solid lap times here.
Well, with the lap times that we saw a little bit earlier on in the session, so 157.820 is the quickest lap time set by Daniel Kirby, as Johnny Gutierrez once again goes faster than GTs. We just about missed that, but he came across the line to put in a 215.887. And that, well, Michael, has absolutely shattered the whole GT field. He's 2.2 seconds ahead of, well, 2nd place driver JT Tammy. That is a margin that I think no one was expecting coming into this qualifying session. And, well, on a 215.887, you should say that, well, at least the track is back to where it was in its quickest state, or at least close to. And we might well see some 157s pop in from these hypercar drivers.
Yeah, I definitely think we're going to see some very, very, very fast times now that this track is really starting to dry out. And that's going to just bode well for racing in general. We're going to see some more overtakes, obviously, with the multi-class racing, but that's going to make overtakes so much better for these hypercars. They're going to be able to trust themselves a little bit more when they go offline to make a pass on a slower car, a slower class category. So, you know, as a driver, you have to be very confident and very, you know, precise with your movements. And if you're worried about your grip, if you're worried that you're going to make a pass and then all of a sudden that rear end's going to come out on you, you're going to back off a little bit. Mentally, it's just going to like sit there in your mind. So as long as these guys are starting to really start to build up their confidence, I think tonight is going to be an amazing race, and I think we're going to see plenty of overtakes.
Daniel Kirby, the first one of the Hypercar drivers to come across the line, is currently purple in sector number 1 and 2. Remember, if he picks up a win this evening, he is the person with the most wins in VWST history. He's already tied on points, so we could go above it this evening. And with a pole position, he starts, he gets off to a really good start. Daniel Kirby on a 158.414 at the moment in that pole position, or that provisional pole position. And, well, like we said, that lap close to the quickest lap in the session so far, a 157.820, also set by this same driver, Daniel Kirby.
Yeah, absolutely flying lap there. Like you said, we're going to start seeing those times really start to jump down. Already coming through in a purple sector there for the first sector. So we expect to see quite the improvement here for Daniel Kirby. We know that he's obviously extremely fast driver, or he wouldn't be in the in the conversation for most wins ever in the VWSC. So let's go ahead and follow him along for this lap as he comes through No Name here, coming out, and then he's going to head into Poulan. This, like you said earlier, I think this is probably the toughest section, the toughest corner on the track. It's so easy to just get off, and he's going to have to back out and go straight to the pits because he just couldn't keep that car, pinned to the inside like you want to there. And it's just so easy to, just get a tire out and all of a sudden you have no grip, or you've ruined your lap at the very least. So that is a very tough corner. And as we watch Tom Lane coming through Poulan now, he's able to handle that quite nicely. It looks like that car is very well set up and ready to go.
Tom Lane, of course, third in the Hypercar Pro Championship. And he's in fourth at the moment in the standings with his quickest lap. Of course, his first lap. A first lap, let's say, Michael, is a lap where you want to get a time on the board. So usually, it's not a lap where you give it everything. Daniel Kirby, at the moment, seems to be in section number 2. He's gone into pit lane, to get a new set of fresh boots under that car and go for it again at the next lap. Tom Lane has chosen to continue, and he's going to cross the line. Will he put in the quickest lap time so far, or will he just get a personal improvement? He will get a personal improvement that puts him up into second overall. That lap time, a 2 minutes flat. But like we saw in the GTs, Michael, a 1.9 second gap from Daniel Kirby all the way down to Tom Lane in second. So both leaders in both car classes, in a class of their own, really.
Yeah, they're able to absolutely stretch their leads out and just put time on the field. And if they're able to continue that and carry that over to the race, they're probably not going to be seeing too much confrontation from anybody, because those are just outstanding lap times that both the GT3 leader Gutierrez and then Daniel Kirby putting through. It's just absolutely stunning laps, and they just seem like they're fighting the car so much. When we ride on board there with Daniel Kirby, as we see a huge snap there for Angladis, but wow, that was a huge snap. It completely ruined his lap. He's going to have to come back around. And like you said, you just want to get a time on the board here first, but he's on his out lap, thankfully, so it won't really hurt him too much, obviously. But something like that, you got to be very careful. You don't want it to mess with your head. You want to be able to feel confident in the car. And it looks like that rear end is just sliding all over the place for George.
Well, across the line, he will start a new lap. And I think George himself was just on an out lap, so that might explain why you had a little bit of a snap, because his tires were still cold. Got him up to temperature in time for La Source. Through Eau Rouge we go. And a tricky corner, this one, especially when it's not quite dry yet. That is a corner where you might see some mistakes, and especially if you catch traffic through there. I think we saw Max Verstappen do that in the 6 hours of Spa-Francorchamps on rFactor 2.2 for the virtual WEC. Where we saw Max Verstappen just collide with a driver there, and that completely ruined their race. So that could well happen here this evening. Let's hope for George it won't be the case through the first sector. A personal improvement for George Angelidis in 11th place at the moment in his class. In 12th overall, Adrian Rice is in front of him. and has now moved down to 12th in this class. Norm Graf has improved up into 9th. This quickest lap time for George Angelidis at the moment, a 2:02.247. So quite some time to find for George here, about 4 seconds compared to our leader Daniel Kirby, who's out on track by the green sector number 1 and purple in sector number 2. He's in sector number 3, completing that almost, and we might well see an even better pole position time from the leader already. I'm going to stay with George Angelidis through the last 2 corners of the backstretch of this track, coming into Blanchimont, which will decide his lap. He had that snap, of course, coming out of curve Paul Frere, but this time was nice and tidy through there. Through Blanchimont, never hit an apex through there. Kept it very wide. That just shows you how wide these cars can go and how, well, wide the racing line can be. It's not on edge anymore in the cars of these days. Across the line for George Angelidis. Will he get a time down below the 2-minute mark and pop himself up into maybe the top 5? No, he does not, but gets himself up into P7 on a 2:01.283, so not quite below that 2-minute mark, but does gain some valuable spots there in his own class. 8th overall at the moment. Timon Suvik has just improved and gone ahead of him. Across the line did also come Daniel Kirby. He improved to a quickest lap time, and listen carefully here, Michael, a 1:58.230. All other drivers are struggling to find a couple of tenths here, and well, Daniel Kirby just just found another 2 tenths on what was already a lap time that was 1.9 quicker than the rest.
Yeah, we didn't really get to see that lap, but it seemed like it was very effortless. He's not having any trouble at all. As we come to the end of qualifying here, it looks like he's probably going to be safe on pole. We don't know that for a fact. Obviously, qualifying isn't over yet. It's never over until the fat lady sings. But I think Daniel Kirby, like you said, able to come out, throw down an amazing lap, come back, throw down another amazing lap, and then come back and still find 2 tenths. So it's definitely going to be a challenge for these drivers to keep up with Daniel today, because he seems like he is just on one.
Tom Lane just improved into 5th. Now, last week, Walter de Bruin was the one who took victory. Oh, Walter de Bruin, what are you doing? He was on a quick lap too. I was just about to tell that. Hang on, though. Bradley Sellers has a purple section number 1. He's in 4th at the moment overall. What can he do compared to Daniel Kirby? Daniel Kirby's just put in another quickest lap time on a 1:58.158. Here is George Angelidis, who's going to come across the line in a bit. He's in 9th at the moment. Again, 2 green sectors for him. Chose to continue. This is the last lap that the drivers can put in. Bradley Sellers, I think, got an off track in section number 2, so his lap won't won't count. A 2:01 flat for George Angelidis, a improvement in terms of time. Sadly for George Angelidis, not in terms of position. That gap to P8, still half a second for George Angelidis, so quite a big gap. Here is, well, your result, your provisional result for qualifying. Daniel Kirby in P1 had a Maya Rose in P2, and John Ewan rounding off the top 3. Together with him on the second row, Bradley Sellers in P4. In the third row, Tom Lade together with Brian Hall in P5 and 6. P7 and 8 on the 4th row of the grid. Walter Bryan and Team 2. Walter Bryan, of course, won at Timon Suvik in P8. Like I said, George Angelidis in P9. Philip Henrique in P10. The first of the Hypercar AM drivers. So Philip Henrique, once again, doing what he needs to do. Wayne Hutchinson, of course, won last time round. He's down in 15th in that class. Ross Smith in P11. Norm Graf in P12. Magnus Dahlgren in P13. Adrian Rice in P14. Jason Whitehead in P16. Rounding off the Hypercar grid before we get to the GT3s. Johnny Gutierrez leading the way there for the pros. JT Tammy in 2nd. And like we saw, quick as ever, Becky Ellie in P19. Overall in P3 in the GT3s, and P1 in her own GT3 AM class. Jamie Zolecki in P20 had a Peter Meyer in P21, and 2nd in his AM class. Eugene Mazur in P3 in his AM class and 22nd overall. Brandon John in P23, ahead of James Walker in P24. Filippo Marazzi in P25, Vinicius Gonçalves in P26, Adam Gray in P27 and P28 for James Bowders, P29 for Matt Bruce, and Vasilis Katerinakis in P30. Then I think we have 3 drivers beyond that, and those 3 drivers are Mike Boos, Stefan Miller, and Stefan Boos. There we go. That is the grid for this evening. And 33 cars this evening with us, which is going to be an absolute blast here on this Spa-Francorchamps circuit in the Ardennes. Like we know, it has its own climate, Michael, and it could rain at any moment during this race. Is something that the drivers are going to have to look out for. It's actually a surprise that that the track is dry, because I think the forecast that we got before this race was saying that it was going to rain on and off, so that it was never really going to become dry. But it looks like the track is almost just fully dry out there.
Yeah, it looked like they were really starting to find a lot of grip when they came around the track. Those last few laps on the Hypercars were really starting to put in some very quick times. I really do think that the track is going to dry out, but like you said, this place has a mind of its own when it comes to weather. Could be perfectly fine for the rest of the race, and we could also see on and off rain showers, and with everybody being on slicks, they're going to have to make that decision pretty quick. So it's going to be interesting, but for now, we have clear weather, and should be a good, clean start for the race.
It's going to make it a lot easier for the drivers, especially at the start. No spray for the drivers to cope with, which is always going to make it difficult, really, especially when the spray and when you're kind of the 4th, 5th car in line, you're not going to see a lot. And the only thing you're going off is the flickering red light, the rain light on the car ahead, to see where the car ahead really is. So if something dramatically happens up the road, you're either going to see it too late or you're not going to see it at all, which is going to make it difficult. But luckily, with dry weather, the drivers won't have to think about that.
Yeah, they don't have to worry about too much of the spray because there's nothing to spray up. But thankfully, we'll be all right, and hopefully it stays dry. But if the weather conditions change, these drivers are very talented. They'll know how to come to terms with everything. So we'll be able to see these guys make the right decision, and girls. I'm sorry, guys and girls make the right decisions. And I'm excited for a great race. You said we have a 33 car grid. That's great. It's going to be awesome racing up and down the field. And, with the mixed class, GT3s and the Hypercars, we're definitely going to see quite a bit of overtaking today.
Yeah. Of course, welcome to everyone in YouTube chat too. Welcome to everyone. We're in the Ardennes, like I said. A beautiful track, this one. Undulation, we have everything here this evening. We might even see, like we've just talked about, some changing weather, which is going to mix things up. Welcome to Mr. Breeze, Alec King, and Greg in chat. Greg says, big up commentators for putting the icing on the cake for this series. Great work, guys. We appreciate that. We appreciate that, of course. Thank you for all the kind messages. Let's see if we get a repeat from the NARS race in turn 1. Now, let's hope that we can keep it clean in Solas, because as we know, that track, or that corner, it is very wide, the corner itself, but then after the corner, it all of a sudden gets really tight again. And this track isn't one of the tightest tracks, but still, turn 1 just lends itself for drivers to launch it all the way around the outside, and then on the exit, all of a sudden, you're like, I have an issue here, I've run out of space. And then you have either one of the two options. You brake, or you go full send, and usually when you go full send, something happens into turn 1, so let's hope that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, the track definitely does seem to kind of thin there at La Source, even though it's still quite wide. If you really look at the corner, it's not a very small corner, but the way that the line flows in the inside corner, you almost tap that inside wall. You catch that little curb there. There really isn't a lot of room on the exit to stay full throttle out and keep it on the track. So 2 cars coming through there, it's definitely going to be a challenge. And then once we have all these cars, lining up with cold tires, coming through on the first lap, it's going to be interesting. I think that's if we have any sort of incidents, it's going to be right there, or possibly Eau Rouge. You know, Eau Rouge on cold tires, that's going to be a challenge as well. So it's going to be definitely very interesting to see how these guys are able to manage the start of this race and, you know, be clean about, you know, their positions and, you know, try to keep their heads straight and calm, you could say.
Yeah. Well, something also to point out is the fact that we have 2 servers here this evening. We're going to get to what the drivers are doing in a bit, but what I first want to point on is the fact that we have 2 servers this evening. We have 17 drivers in server number 2. And in terms of the weather, because how VWSC, how they manage it to get all drivers in the same result is they overlay the race time from every driver. Now, you might ask yourself, it's difficult to do with the weather. It could be different in the different sessions. Now, I have been informed that that is not the case. The weather plugin that they use is pointed to the same area. So they both, theoretically, should have the same track conditions and the same weather out on track. So it should be all fair and square for both servers. And you can still have the same race results. Now, of course, the advantage that the Hypercar drivers will have, Michael, in server number 2, is the fact that there is not as much traffic. So you don't have to slow down for as much traffic, and that might result in a quicker race time. So that's something that the Hypercar drivers are going to have to look out for in server number 1, because you're going to have to keep in mind in server number 2, there's not as much traffic for the Hypercar drivers. Getting to what the drivers are doing now, they are making sure that they are not in the same pit box together with someone else. If they are, they're either going to line up side by side, or they're going to have to figure out with the other person that they're together with in one box, if I'm correct with this. They have to talk to them and try and figure out the way that they don't pit at the same time, so they both can use the box how it's supposed to and don't have to line up side by side. As you can see, bottom of your picture, 2 of the same cars. I think that those are 2 Acuras lining up in, well, the same pit box. Another Acura lining up alongside an Acura Hypercar. So that's what can happen. And for some drivers, it could be annoying because, as we know, in rFactor 2, you don't ghost in the pit lane. If you drive into someone, you actually hit the person in the pit lane, which is not a good thing. I've seen it happen in other series before where someone thinks they ghost through him and they just drive straight into the back of someone that is taking up a pit stop at that point. And it just ruins both drivers' races, which is going to make it difficult for both drivers, really. So let's hope that's not going to be the case this evening.
No, this is definitely going to be a challenge for all these drivers. These pit lanes, you know, like you said, they're going to have to share the boxes, so they're going to have to be very, very careful. Now, we probably won't see the Hypercars. If you have a Hypercar and a GT3 car sharing the same box, that probably won't be as much of an issue as if you have 2 of the same class cars sharing the same box. So that's when you're going to start to see like them having to make some decisions about when they're going to pit relative to who they're sharing the box with. And it's going to become a challenge, but I think we should be okay for now as we see the cars are starting to come out on their out lap.
Yeah, these are just the warm-up laps for the drivers. Mr. Reason Chats asked, weather is live weather by. Yes, the weather is the live weather at Spa-Francorchamps at the moment, which will mean that if it rains in the real world at Spa-Francorchamps, it's going to rain in the server too. So that's going to make things interesting. And he also says, wouldn't it be better to have Hypercar and GT3 on separate servers? Now, I get what you mean, but that also defeats the whole point of the VWSC, the Virtual World Sports Car Championship, the fact that it is multi-class. That is what it makes it so special. And if you put all the 2 classes in a different server, then it kind of defeats the purpose of the whole multi-class system. It would maybe be a bit fair for all competitors, but I still think that this is the way forward because, well, multi-class is just beautiful to look at.
Yeah, I love multi-class racing. That's where you get all these overtakes, obviously, because you have a slower class and a faster class coming through. That's when you see a lot of challenges. It's going to be a challenge not only for the Hypercars to make the overtake, but for the GT3 cars, too, to make sure that they're in a position that they're able to, you know, really telegraph almost what they're planning on doing. You know, they want to be predictable. They want to be reliable. They need to be able to trust each other. So the hypercar needs to be able to make that move safely, and that is one of the issues that we're going to see is, these two cars are somewhat battling for position. Obviously, we're not in the race yet, but they're kind of like working on it a little bit. One car went to go past another car, and then all of a sudden you got a hypercar coming out of nowhere. So they ended up a little 3 wide there. So you're going to see quite a few incidents like that. And that Lamborghini is off the road.
Well, it seemed like for a moment that was not the right line. But he got it back on track. Well, heads back into pit lane just to practice pit entry too for a second there. Important too, because if there's one place where you can gain some easy time, Michael, we both know where it is, and that is in the pit lane. It's a place where you don't want to be too long. So every second you gain there, you don't have to gain on track. And every second you lose, it's going to be very, very hard to make up for during the race.
Yeah, at times we're going to see a lot of these drivers really have to make a decision. I think we're going to see one-stop strategies for the most part. We could see a couple two-stoppers. Depends on how well their tires hold up. Obviously, fuel is another factor, but in these changing conditions, are they going to be able to stay out there, and are they going to be forced to change their compound from a slick tire to a wet tire? That's going to affect everybody's timing, and it's going to make it a lot more challenging as we see a hypercar going way off there. That was Ross Smith jumping into the pits there, but that was a big off, and I'm not really sure what happened there.
Yeah, it seemed like he just got a bit loose at that point. The Porsche under attack now from another Porsche. I do love the look of how aggressive that Porsche looks. I'm kind of a fan of everything coming out of Stuttgart. Everything that is made in Stuttgart kind of runs forever is my motive really for the Porsches. However, it was kind of not true for the 24 Hours of Daytona, the real first test for these cars. But oh well, it's I love my Porsches, and it's a great car to drive in. So are all the other hypercars and all the other GT3s, but it has a special place in my heart, this Porsche, and it seems like it's the same for the Porsche on track at the moment. Maya Rose goes to the top in this little warm-up session on the 159.379 in her Porsche 963. And the difficult thing too is to kind of manage when to push, when not to push, because if you're going to push early on, you might just completely destroy the tires, which in the end, on the long haul, is going to cost you time, but on the short term, it's going to gain you time. Mm-hmm. So to kind of balance that is something that drivers are going to have to work on just throughout the whole race, which for me always seems like a very interesting aspect of the race, and I always love to kind of look at who is fuel saving, who's tire saving, because fuel saving, especially in these cars, is very apparent. You lift off before the braking zone, about 157 or 75 meters before the braking zone, you lift off, and you brake a little bit later than you would normally do because you lose some speed coming into the braking zone. That's how you fuel save in these cars. If you ever hear a driver lift off before the braking zone, you know that they are fuel saving, and you know that they are on a little bit more of a saving strategies, which I think the Porsches will be doing this evening. It's a very wild guess, but we've seen so far, like every race, that the Porsche is the car that has been able to go longest on fuel.
Yeah, when they lift off like that, they try to let the car kind of slow itself down with its own downforce.
Yeah.
So that definitely saves fuel. It also saves your tires a little bit, and it also keeps your brakes, from getting too hot. Obviously, if you're at full speed and then you slam on the brakes at your braking point compared to, lifting off and just being a little bit slower and a little bit calmer on the brakes, it's definitely going to save the wear and tear on your vehicle. So it's going to be very interesting, but I think you're right. I think we're going to see quite a few drivers fuel saving just to try to make it a one-stop. It's going to be tough, but I think we should be able to at least have a few people manage a one-stop.
Yeah, well, the Porsches are usually the cars that go in last. If they can't make it, one thing is for sure, the rest is probably not going to make it too. However, we have had a chat to some of the drivers, and they do say that they do have some special strategies in place for this track. What that is, even we as commentators don't know. Now, if you don't know, commentators never know. We are always wrong. We can try and predict the strategy, but 9 out of 10 times, we're not 100% on it. So whatever we say, don't 100% believe us, because usually what you see is that either something changes in terms of conditions and the driver's going later or earlier as the warm-up comes to an end, the drivers will have the chance to go down to the grid up for the race. But usually, us commentators, we don't know what's going on in the pit box. We don't know what's going on with their engineers, so we never quite know on what strategy the drivers are. We can get an understanding of where they are, but never get it 100% right. Here is the grid then for this evening's race. Daniel Kirby and Maya Rose on the front row ahead of John Ewan and Bradley Sellers on the second row and third and fourth. Fifth, Tom Lane and Brian Hall in P5 and 6. In P7 and 8, our winner from last time round, Wouter de Bruin ahead of Timon Sivik in 8th, 9th and 10th. Are George Angelides and Philip Henrique, the first of the Hypercar AM drivers. Ross Smith and Norm Graff on row number 6 in P11 and 12. Row number 7 is, well, settled by Magnus Dahlgren and Adrian Rice in P13 and 14. 15 for Wayne Hutchinson, our winner in the AM class from last week, second overall, and Jason in P16. Johnny Gutierrez in P17, JT Tammy in P18, 19. This is Becchieri, the first of the AM class drivers. Jamie Zolecki in P20, P24 for Peter Meyer and Eugene Mazur in P22, Brandon Johns P23, and James Walker in P24 in the 022. Then Filippo Marazzi in P25 ahead of Vinicius Gonçalves in P26, 27 and 28 for Adam Gray and James Bowders in 28. Matt Bouse in P29, Vasilis Katerinakis in P30, P31 for Mike Bouse and Stefan Miller in P32, Stephen Bouse in P33, rounding off our 33 car grid. Now, quickly going over the top 3 overall in the other server, because that's something that, of course, maybe you guys are interested in too. If I just quickly pull up the timing. Aaron Clark is there ahead of Carl Vessa and Angus Dong in P3 there. That's the overall top 3 in the Hypercars 2. So that's the overall top 3 in server number 2. Back then to the server, we are looking at server number 1, 33 drivers and 33 car grid. Daniel Kirby on the pole position ahead of Maya Rose in P2. It's going to be an interesting one, Michael.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a very interesting one. I think we were talking about earlier, the start is definitely going to kind of set the tone for this. Everybody's going to be coming off cold tires, coming through that first turn, and then obviously through Eau Rouge. So it's going to be very interesting as these cars are lined up on the grid, and we should be, you know, away here momentarily. So this is going to be exciting. I can't wait to see what these hypercars are going to be able to do off the line. And, you know, are they going to be able to behave themselves, or are we going to see a turn 1 incident?
Well, it's made so that that doesn't happen. And why we say that is the fact that they start in single file. And, of course, the orange zone, which runs all the way from start-finish to turn 9 on lap number 1. For people who don't know what the orange zone is, it's a zone at the start where if you do make any contact or have a crash with another driver, penalties will be harsher there. And that is just to kind of keep the crashes at least in the first couple of corners to a minimum. Now, it does help that we do have a long straight from La Source all the way to Lecombe through Eau Rouge and Radillon. So that does help as we now see them come through Eau Rouge and Radillon, one of the most famous corners in motorsports. And like I said, penalties will be harsher through that orange zone, so that also helps with keeping the start at least clean, or it's there to keep the start clean. If it does help, that's going to be down to the drivers. Do you want to take that risk of maybe overtaking, but maybe if you do touch, that the penalty will be harsher? It's a choice that you have to make, and it's a risk that you have to see if you'll be willing to take it. and it's something that we're going to see once we get the green flag. Drivers will now be getting ready to do their single file start. The drivers, or at least Daniel Kirby, will only be allowed to go once he crosses the start-finish line. So not earlier than that, he will be able to go once he crosses the start-finish line.
Yeah, they have all these rules set up for the beginning of the race just to keep it as clean as possible. And we've seen, obviously, in multiple different races, incidents that can happen so early on, and we don't want to see that. We want to see good, clean racing. Now, it's funny that you said they're going to have to make a decision if they have an opportunity to pass. Is it going to be worth it? Well, I've never met a racing driver that didn't want to make a pass. It's going to be hard for them to hold back. So it is going to be very interesting, but they know the deal. They know the situation. If they cause any sort of, orange zone incidents, that penalty is going to be harsher, and it's going to be something that they're going to have to really deal with, especially since a lot of these drivers are still trying to qualify for Le Mans. So this is going to be very, very, very tight and very important. But there's a lot of long-term goal thinking that they're going to have to put up with. So, and like you said earlier, we're not privy to any of that information as commentators. We're pretty much 100% wrong all the time. But it is what it is, and I'm just excited to see some good racing here at Spa.
For sure, it's a Peugeot leading the way ahead of a Porsche, and we've seen that, well, the Porsches, and especially Maya Rose, has been able to stretch that stint and still be quick, because when you do fuel safe, you do lose a bit of lap time, and when you can keep that to a minimum and do it in a certain way that you lose the least amount of time possible, it is gonna, be an advantage on the long haul, which is going to be something that Maya Rose will be able to, or will be looking to do once again here this evening. It's a Peugeot leading the way ahead of a Porsche, then a Peugeot again, then a BMW, another Porsche, and the first Acura in P6. Brian Hall, of course, in the Acura, then a BMW, and then 4 Acuras. Timon Suvic, George Angelidis, Philip Enrique, and Ross Smith, all in the Acuras. And that rounds off the top 11 here at the start. We're now coming through Blanchimont. It's almost time to head to the green flag and come down to Les Sources through Rallye en Rouge. It's time to wave that green flag for the marshals. Of course, you want to set yourself up for a good exit out of the bus stop. Now, it won't matter too much because you haven't crossed the start-finish line yet, which will be the deciding factor on when Daniel Kirby will go. Looking at Daniel Kirby now, the man who will start this race from pole position, who can go ahead on overall victories in the VWC, the man who will start this race from pole position. It's about time for him to cross that line. And green, green, green. There we go. Green, green, green for race number 5.
There he's off.
WSC down into the source, already trying to go for that move is Maya Rose. Thinks the better of it though. And like I said, it's going to be a tricky zone. That orange zone, do you want to make that move? If you do have the opportunity to do it on the straight, do it on the straight. The Peugeot behind that of John Ewan, trying to make that pass already on Maya Rose. That car, slicky in the straight line, very quick on this part of the track, so we'll be trying to utilize its quickest part of the car. Already pulling to the outside. Remember, this is the orange zone, so he's going to have to make a clean pass here. On the inside, still Maya Rose having the inside is an advantage there, and she does keep P2, but she fended off the first attack from John Newman, as we now have seen a green flag for the GT drop 2.
We see them all coming through here on the top of Verdillion there. Very clean race so far from the Hypercars. That was nice to see. Maya Rose did try to dive down in turn 1, and that obviously, opened the door up. She had to fall back out and kind of back off a tiny little bit. That opened the door for John Ewan, and Ewan, obviously, with the Peugeot having that straight line speed, was able to really put a lot of pressure on her. So good to both of them for keeping it clean, but it was definitely a tough start there for Maya Rose. She had an opportunity she had to back out of, and it put her right in the clutches of John Ewan.
Yeah, we're looking at Brandon Johns, who's down on P22. Peter Meyer is the driver ahead of him in the Mercedes AMG. That car, I do have to say, one of my favorite cars to actually drive in. It sounds nice when you're inside the car, and it's a very quick one too. P4 at the moment in the Pro Class for Brandon Johns. And the last of the Hypercars is the Acura of I think George Angelidis. Then we have the Mercedes of Johnny Gutierrez, who we know was super quick in qualifying, already has a second ahead of JT Tammy in P18. It's quite close there for Brandon John. Just going to have to watch out. We're outside of the orange zone, so passes can be made, and the normal penalties will be given if you don't make that pass stick safely. And ooh, a big snap there from, I think, the BMW ahead.
Yeah, that was from Brian Hall there. You
Tom
back
Lane.
up with these, the hypercars here. They're really starting to settle in a little bit as we follow Tom Lane here, like you were saying, behind Bradley Sellers. Looks like he is trying to put as much pressure as he can, but it's still going to be a little early, and we see them really starting to file out now.
Brian Hall, that snap he had, it's going to affect him all the way down this long straight. Magnus Dahlgren trying to make that move on Norm Graf. Can't quite make it yet in the Ferrari. I think he's the first Ferrari out on track. Yes, he is. He's the first Ferrari 499P. Magnus Dahlgren, the other Ferrari down in P14. Jason Whitehead for the Storm Rider Racing team. He's down in P14 in his Ferrari. 2 Ferraris though only on the grid here this evening, which is a shame because I really looking hard.
JT Tommy is into the pits. He had an issue, and we're going to get a replay here. We're going to see what exactly happened there. Hopefully, there we go. He was already in the pit lane here, so there he is, way off there.
I think it happened before this. That car is already crabbing.
Yeah, it looks like. Here we go, getting another one. Oh, he just got on the inside corner and just right into that wall. Ooh, lucky he was able to keep it to the left side of the track there. Didn't jump out in front of another car. That could have been really bad.
Good for him to keep it off track there, which was something that was necessary. Otherwise, he could have been thrown back into the path of another driver. This is Tom Lane trying to make that move on Bradley Sellers. Has a little look down the inside of the BMW. Couldn't quite make it stick. He's going to have to wait. Maybe do it all the way down that backstretch. Running up Eau Rouge, Radion, and onto the Camel Straight. Camel Straight is usually where you see most moves happening with the slipstream battle between these two cars. Well, rain is in the air. Is it going to come down? That's going to be the big question. It looks very grey overhead. We might well see those windshield wipers turn on in a bit. We never know. The weather here at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit in the Ardennes, always unpredictable. Tom Lane couldn't quite make that move stick into the bus of chicane. He's going to have to try again. But so far, Michael, it looks like he's not quite close enough to try anything into Le Mans.
No, but he is definitely closing up under the braking there. He is able to really get on the back there. Timon Suvek right here on the back here of Walter De Bruin. We're going to see if Timon is able to make a move as they come down into the hairpin here. Yeah, through Rivage here, and no, unable to really keep close there. Walter is able to keep his 7th spot, but he is going to be under pressure here for the majority of this lap here, and then some as we jump back a little bit further here, back to the battle for 10th place. Magnus Dahlgren coming here on Norman Grat. Let's see, is he able to make this move? Through Pouan, that's not someplace you really want to make a pass. You can get off there and very, very easily lose, everything. So that's a tough spot. We've seen a lot of cars really, popping a nose down, trying to make the driver ahead of them, force them into a mistake, but we haven't been able to really see too many actual moves yet. I think people are being a little bit more patient than usual tonight.
Whoa, he's off! A clash between the top two. I think Daniel Kirby and Maya Rose are both off, and that must have happened. That must have happened coming out of Blood-Chamon. I can guarantee you it happened coming out of Blood-Chamon. The top two collide, and that is rolling John Ewan up into P1. We're going to get a replay on the outside is Maya Rose in the Porsche. Contact with Daniel Kirby, and that is hard into the wall for both the drivers. The Porsche then backwards into the concrete wall on the right-hand side of the screen. But both drivers is a handful of positions. Daniel Kirby dropped all the way down to P5. And that car with some heavy damage. Let's see if that car is going to be able to continue struggling through Eau Rouge. As you can see, the drivers behind that closing up, sucking into that slipstream. But Daniel Kirby definitely with some damage. And that steering angle does not look like it's straight. He's grabbing to the left-hand side.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a challenge. I'm not sure he's going to need to. He's got to have to come in to the pits. He's losing way too much time. He's unable to keep anybody behind him. He's crabbing. So I think we're going to see him have to come into the pits. He might try to stay out there and fight, but that is definitely a wounded duck, you know, going through. And it looked like Mia Rose was trying to pass on the outside there and just got on the curbing and just kind of lost it, steered right into Daniel there, and it just nothing either of them could do. So that's probably going to be something for the stewards to take a look at. It will definitely look like Mia got loose there and got into the quarter panel of Daniel Kirby.
Well, we've seen that move happen in real life in Formula 1. I think Max Verstappen did it once on Felipe Nasser in 2015 or 2016. I think it was 2015 at Spa-Francorchamps. He pulled that move on the outside, but ever since then, we've never really seen any proper moves on Blanchimont. And once again, Tom Lane going to try and make that move on Bradley. There are yellow flags up ahead. Once again, coming out of Blanchimont, a quick corner, defending the inside. There's a GT on the inside. I think that is one of the Aston Martins. Tom Lane can't make the move stick. Adam Graham, I'm hearing, is the driver who was grabbing towards the pit lane. That car without a rear wing, and I think we're going to see why that car does not have a rear wing. Through Blanchimont, just getting loose on exit. This track at the moment, Michael, not providing any of the grip that we saw in qualifying.
No, these drivers are definitely having a tough time keeping it out of the wall here, and we've seen quite a few issues there down that back straight. So I'm not sure if maybe it's a little slick out there. I'm not 100% sure, but it looks like they are, like you said, definitely not getting the grip that they had. And we see these two battling here. Katernak is right there on the back end of Matt Boos, really just forcing the way, trying to make a mistake happen here for Matt Boos. Just coming through here to Puhan, and we'll see if he's able to do anything. Really starting to get on the back here, but you got to be very careful through this turn here. You can get loose so much, and Vasilis Katernakis there really kind of fighting the car to keep it on track a little bit. Looks like he had a little bit of oversteer there. Yeah, he's definitely fighting the steering wheel, trying to follow in I think that we might be dealing with a little bit of weather. We'll have to check that to see what's going on here. But as we know, that it's Spa, you know, we got that live weather, so it could just change at a moment's notice. So it's unpredictable, but that's one of the reasons why I love this track.
Well, it has its own climate. We've talked about it too many times already on this straight, but it's something that is so important for the drivers. It's slippery out on track, and, well, it might get even more slippery during the next stages. Katernaki can't quite make the move stick, and some sad news for the Mia Rose fans. Mia Rose is out of this race. She has officially retired. Back into pit lane, JT Tammy, I think also one of the drivers who is out of this race. Got De Bruyne, winner last time round, has come round at the bus stop chicane, and that is a painful position for him to wait, because he has to wait for the whole hypercar field to get past. Now my question is, was there contact? No, there was not. He was on the grass trying to pass the GT. Here is that replay. Left-hand side tires on the grass just gets loose, and that McLaren is lucky not to get run into by Roger De Bruyne though. That could have easily been a side contact with that McLaren.
Yeah, that was definitely a very, very, very touch-and-go situation there. Lucky to keep it out of the wall. I think maybe when he got on the grass, it was part of the braking point, so he didn't really have a choice. He was trying to hit the brakes on the grass, and that's never going to end well for anybody, but lucky to keep it out of that McLaren, like you said, and, you know, thankfully he's able to continue on.
Leader overall, still John Ewan, and he, just like, a little bit further down the road now, Daniel Kirby, could go ahead or could go on top in terms of overall wins in the VWSC. So John Ewan, one of the drivers who can do that, and he at the moment in prime position to do so. 3 seconds, about that is the gap to Bradley Sellers in P2 in the BMW. So Peugeot still leading the way. Vasilis Katernakis in 5th in the Pro class, trying still desperately to get past that Lamborghini. The Lamborghini ahead of
Matt Bruce. Definitely having a tough challenge. This has been a fight that's been brewing for quite a few laps. And if you see coming out of that corner, there's definitely a little bit of understeer there as the Hypercar is able to go by on the outside. And these guys are really battling with these cars. So I really do think the track is starting to get a little bit slippery. Oh yeah. Oh wow. That was insane. That turn-in angle right there. That's coming down at the braking zone with bus stop chicane and unable to do anything, a little bit too far back.
What I would say is if you do give it as much luck as the drivers are giving it at the moment, the tires won't last a long time. So we might see some drivers change tires at the pit stop, we might not. It's something that we're going to have to see, but the luck, as you can see, they almost have to take over with the other hands. That's how much luck they are putting in. But, you know, it's something that we're going to need to look at. Maybe it's already coming down a bit, the rain. Maybe into Eau Rouge. That is never a point to make a mistake. The leaders all coming through now. One of the Hypercars. That is a Hypercar and the Ferrari. The Ferrari of Peter Meyer and Eugene Mazur, I think. Yeah.
Running along here with Ross Smith on Magus Dahlgren, but that was a very touchy situation there. Coming up Bredillion through Eau Rouge, you know, you got the two GT3 cars coming through there, and they're battling for position. Those Hypercars, they didn't have any place to go. So lucky that we didn't see an incident there, but it's definitely going to be a challenge, especially if this track, these conditions are starting to really start to degrade.
Have to difficult for us and for the drivers. Alec King in chat says, little update, game crashed lap 1. Great first race back. Well, talking about a first race back, that's about as bad as it could have gone for him. The 3-1 moment the Ferraris at the track, and he keep it straight into the wall, into Kurt Frere, and that's going to be hard into the wall for Magnus Dahlgren.
That is a tough situation there. Just getting back on the grass, it just provides no grip, and that Ferrari was just not able to keep it out of the wall. Hopefully, there's not too much damage, but
that was a crazy close moment. Can Motor Brian do anything after that little spin he had at the bus chicane at this place, getting onto the grass, trying to pass a slower class McLaren. Ross Smith trying to overtake the Ferrari ahead of him, a little bit of oversteer coming out of the bus stop chicane. These are so tricky conditions. 45 minutes still remaining. We've had about 1/4 of the race done already. That has flown by, but the conditions are getting trickier and trickier for the drivers. But coming back to what Alex said in YouTube chat, that's about as bad as it could have gone for Alec himself.
Yeah, absolutely gut-wrenching there, but you know, with computers, you know, we're always going to deal with bugs. Things happen, you know. As much as we love our sims, they're not perfect. So, but when you think
it's like an engine failure in real life.
Yep, that's actually exactly what I was going to say. You know, you have to kind of look at it like there's some sort of mechanical failure. These cars in real life aren't perfect either. They have mechanical failures. They have their issues, and you know, we hope for the best, but obviously, you know, nothing's perfect. So we got to deal with what we deal with. But it's obviously gut-wrenching there for Alex.
Ross Smith still ahead of Motor Brian. Well, actually creating a little bit of a gap now. Traffic into play too. Well, Tom Lane trying to get past Bradley Sellers here. This battle has been going on for quite a while, and that has allowed John Ewan to create a little bit of a gap. 6.2 seconds the gap at the moment for the leader in this race, John Ewan. So he's comfortable out in front, but Tom Lane looks like he's a bit quicker than Bradley Sellers. However, where is he going to make that pass, Michael?
It's going to be tough. The bus stop chicane is the best opportunity. He's going to try it here. He's going to try it. There's going to be contact. He's going to have to back out. He definitely was a little far back there, but that's probably the best opportunity that he's going to have is right there in the bus stop chicane. He's got that draft. He's really close, but he just a little bit too far out that time. We'll see if he's able to do anything on this lap, but this battle has been brewing for quite a long time between Sellers and Lane. So it's definitely allowing, like you said, Ewan to get up the road. He's not feeling too much pressure. I think he sees win number 76, just up the road from him. So we ride along here with Bradley Sellers. There's a great camera here, a great view of the front bonnet, as you like to say in England. In America, we call it a hood, but Americans are silly.
Well, we have our lovely American on production at the moment, James Parfit. So for the ones who weren't here for that one, during the historic races at Oschersleben, I brought him in as our lovely American. And I can remember for the rest of the broadcast, he was looking at me, and if looks could kill, I would have been a dead person at the moment. But yeah, James, of course. Looking at the GT battles then, P2 and 3 in the AM class, Eugene Mazur and Peter Meyer. The gap between those two, half a second. This has been like this for quite a while now. We've got Hypercars coming through now as well. That's the Ferrari of, I think, the first of
Magnus
the two. Magnus Dahlgren.
Or Dahlgren, yeah.
Overall. And that has come now. Eugene Mazur to get through a bit.
Oh, that was Joseph Whitehead actually coming through there. Sorry, Jason Whitehead.
Well, what that has done, it has allowed Eugene Mazur now to get a little bit of a gap. However, traffic comes back into play for Eugene himself too, and that has allowed Peter Meyer to get back that time he lost, or at least most of it. But that's something that I always say, it ebbs and flows a bit, the traffic. It's really interesting to look at over a whole race distance, but as long as at the end of the race it kind of evens out, well, you can't be too grumpy about it. Every time you get into bad traffic, yes, I can understand it's difficult as a driver because you want to close up the gap in front of you. You don't want to lose time. You're racing to win, and if you can't catch the guy ahead, then you know yourself that you're at least slower than one person on the track, which is not a nice feeling, to tell you that much. But you always want to take time out of the car ahead, and if that is not possible because of traffic, it does get a bit heated in the car sometimes. You as a driver have to keep cool at that point too, because you have to make calculated decisions. If you go out on track and you're driving around like a hot-headed person, just making stupid decisions, launching it up the inside of every GT car, at some point, Michael, your luck is going to run out and you're going to take either a GT car route or yourself.
Yeah, you got to be really careful when it comes to slower traffic, especially around here. We know the conditions. We've talked about it all day, but especially around here. And it's, as we ride along here with Magnus Dahlgren right on the back of Norm Graf, really taking, he's going to kind of lose a little bit of speed here to him coming out of no-name corner, but he really got up on the rear, right on the rear of him there through Favage. This battle has been brewing for quite a little whiles now, but got really far out there. Huan. And this is the battle for 8th, 7th, 6th, and 5th place.
5th and 6th, what did Brian and Russ Smith have? Well, they have begun to pull away a bit. However, the battle between these four has been going on for quite a while now. John Ewan has about a 3-second gap to Tom Lane up front. Tom Lane, I think, has got past Brian Hall and now is chasing down that Peugeot at the front. And off track for one of the BMWs. I think that was Roger Brown who ran a little bit wide. Norm Graf has caught up a bit, so has Magnus Dahlgren. He might be able to go for a move on the Cadillac ahead of him.
He's definitely going to be close.
No, he's going to take the better of it. He's too far back. Never, Michael, you're going to launch it from that far back. Make a mistake. However, Norm Graf, first person to go into the pit lane. And that, Michael, will definitely be a 2-stop. You're not going to tell me that you are going to pit with about 38 minutes left in this race and still be able to make it to the end. That's not going to happen. But Ewan also into the pit lane. Our previous leader of the race, Tom Lane, that will explain why he was gaining so much, has gone up into the lead now. But De Bruyne, everyone is almost in. But where are the Porsches? I told you, Tom Lane is one of the only Porsches remaining out on track together with Wayne Hutchinson. He is leading at the moment. Maya Rose, of course, the strongest Porsche on track, was in second when that crash happened. but she has retired out of this race because of contact with, of course, a little bit earlier on, Daniel Kirby. We saw it coming out of Blanchimont, got onto the outside, onto the curb, a slippery track surface. Maybe not the smartest decision to go around the outside, but it's always easy for us to talk about that afterwards. Making that split-second decision in the car is always difficult. Sadly, for was the wrong decision. Sadly, she has retired from this race, so now it's Tom Lane. The quickest Porsche out on track at the moment, and the best Porsche in terms of fuel economy at the moment. Because behind that, I just touched on it. It was a little bit further back in the Porsche. I think James Bowder is in the GT class. Who's the next Porsche out on track?
This is definitely going to be a tough challenge here coming through the bus stop chicane. Daniel Kirby is back out on track. We're watching him right now. Although he is a lap down, he is back on track, so we're able to follow him a little bit. But obviously, this has got to be crushing for Daniel Kirby. He had that opportunity to possibly take the race. The race win, which would give him the most race wins in VWSC. Unfortunately, it's looking like he's not going to be able to pull that out today. So maybe better luck next time out. Obviously, it was a tough situation. I think that's going to be one that the stewards are going to have to take a look at once again. But good to see him back out. He's making a pass here. Although he is a lap down, he is free to kind of race. He's the faster car here. So we'll see if he's able to, move his way up. And actually, I take that back. That was for position. George Angelides there passed for position. So I guess that both of them are going to be a lap down. But obviously Daniel Kirby, we know what kind of speed he has. He's definitely a fast driver, so he should make his way up through, a couple positions, but it's going to be tough for him to, even manage getting back to the top 10. Take a look here at Jason Whited.
Well, something that's going to be important now also for the drivers that are coming through. You don't want to get stuck behind the other driver for too long. You want to make your way through the traffic as quick as possible. So for Tom Lane, for Don Grant, for Brian Hall, all those drivers who've made their pit stop, it's going to be important to get through that traffic as quick as possible. John Ewan in P2 now. The only driver who has to overtake is Timo Tsuvik, who's 41 seconds ahead of him now. I don't think that any of the hypercars will be able to make it on a one-stop. Every car has pitted before the 35-minute mark. The only car who hasn't is Timo Tsuvik. So if he can go about 4 or 5 minutes longer, he might be the only one settled for a one-stop. But as I can see, he's already into the pit lane, and that will mean that every car in this race will at least, Michael, have to make another pit stop.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be challenging for a lot of these drivers, but yeah, we're looking at two stoppers pretty much up and down the field. But it's going to be tough, obviously we know. But oh wow, going all the way on the inside of that GT3 car. It's just such a tough place to catch traffic. It's all about where you catch the traffic. That is how you're going to manage your race, is finding a way to kind of control that as much as possible. We saw that hypercar driving down the inside there of Eau Rouge coming up the hill. That's not an ideal situation, but obviously, you got to take the curveballs when they're thrown at you. So luckily, we didn't have an incident there, but we've seen quite a few incidents already today, and it's just obviously showing how challenging not only these cars are, but how challenging Spa is as a track.
Yeah, like we said in the beginning, usually one of the races with the highest amount of DNFs. Now, no, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to jinx it. But, well, so far, only one DNF in the name of Maya Rose, but a pretty significant one because she's quick and she was there at the top at the start of this race. When it happened, was going for a move for the lead, but she's the only one at the moment out of this race. Steve Boost, the only one at the moment about 2 laps down, together with JT Tammy and Adam Correa. Those drivers 2 laps down, but of course also in the GTs 2. This is the closest battle on track at the moment that we are looking at. Mike Boos together with Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller, excuse me, 424 and the 098. The gap between those two about 1.1. And for Mike, it's going to be important to try and catch that slipstream going onto the back straight, because if you can, well, it's going to be a big advantage for him. It looks like, however, that Lamborghini is super quick, punching off the corners.
Yeah, definitely got a lot of grunt coming out of the corners, but having a hard time really staying in the slipstream of that McLaren. Really just, it's been tough here. Mike Boos and Stephen Miller have been battling for a couple laps now, and Mike Boos is just doing everything he can to just stay with him. I'm not sure if maybe he's dealing with a little bit of tire degradation or what, but it's definitely been challenging for him. And now we're going to see just how strong that toe is coming down here. Nope, not very strong at all. He under braking, he does gain a little bit of time, but then he's going to lose it right back.
Well, what you have to keep in mind is the fact that he didn't have the best rouge already on. And it had a little bit of a moment through there. So that's going to lose him speed. And that's going to be a heart-and-mouth moment for Mike. Because if there's one corner we know in the booth you don't want to have moments at, it's that corner. Because, well, super tricky corner. And we do see that it's, well, it seems like that at the moment, the track state has become a little bit better as we see the sun actually poking out now. This is something, Michael, that we did not expect here this evening, to see the sun. But the track, well, it's going from good to great to even better.
Yeah, no, the sun is coming out, the track is drying out. We should be seeing some very clean track driving here. I don't think we're going to have to deal with the wets today, so that should definitely keep our lap times up. So this will be interesting to see how these drivers are able to really just kind of put that rain factor in the back of their mind and just kind of go for it now. You know, they're able to really just push at this point because the conditions are just getting better and better throughout the race. We see...
Well, we're going to have a quick read through the classes. John Ewan is your driver, leading the way at the halfway mark. Bradley Sellers in P2 and Tom Lane in P3 in the Pro class. That is how the top 3 of the Pro class is looking. All of these drivers will have to make another pit stops. Looking at the Hypercar AM class, Felipe Enrique is leading the way there. Wayne Hutchinson is the only other driver in the Hypercar AM class, so only 2 drivers fighting it out for the overall victory there in that class. Johnny Gutierrez, I have to say, leading the way in the GT3 Pro class, and Jamie Zolecki in P2. And, well, it's interesting to see the gap between these two, really, Michael, because it has been fluctuating. Then one is quicker, then the other is quicker. So it's interesting to see the gap between those 2 drivers. Then, of course, the GT3 AM class, Becky Ellie leading the way there in the 092. The championship leader there, about 20 seconds to Eugene Mazur in P2. Peter Meyer, excuse me, in P20 overall, and P3 in the GT3 AM class. So all in all, the classes, the lead has been close. Well, overall, at some points, I think we saw Tom Lane gain a lot, but he's lost a lot in the last, well, what, half a stint, because we've had almost half a stint again. But Tom Lane lost a lot, and he lost a lot in the pit lane too. It seems like his pit stop was a bit longer than John Ewan and Bradley Sellers. Could he have taken tyres, Michael?
It's possible that he did. We did see he take a lot longer than we thought, but as we look at the YouTube chat here, Craig saying he's gutted that he's missing the race. Craig, we'd love to see you out there. But, oh, the little bit of snap there, couple snaps. And also want to shout out to Zach Sweeney. Sorry, Zach, butchering your name there. Oh, man, that was tough, though. Coming through there and We're going to come up the hill now. We're going to take a look here at Tom Lane in third place, trying to chase down Bradley Sellers. It sounds like he had an off, so we're going to see if maybe we can figure out what was going on there. He has dropped back quite a bit. Like you said, he's 7 seconds back now. He's going to come up on the back end of this McLaren. And there is...
Well, I do have a prediction in terms of the weather in front of me, the weather forecast, and it says it's going to rain in 6 minutes. Now, if I look out on track, it's almost clear skies with the sun poking through. So I can't see rain really in the near future. However, it does say on my weather forecast that it should rain at 9 o'clock, which it is for us Europeans here in Sweden, in about 6 minutes. So in about 6 minutes, we are expecting some rain. So we might well see some rain come the end of this race, and that is maybe why some drivers pitted earlier on to maybe take advantage of that pit stop and didn't want to leave it to the last minute. Eugene Mercer, the driver we are looking at, it is Peter Meyer we were looking at, some hypercar traffic coming through. One of the Cadillacs, it's Eugene Mercer ahead of Peter Meyer, who's trying to catch that gap. Still coming down, however, trying to get past Michael. That has been the issue this evening.
Yeah, being able to figure out the opportunities to pass have been a challenge for each class to race each other. We've seen a lot of close fighting, close battles, but we haven't seen too many class-on-class opportunities for passing. I do want to jump back over to the chat real quick. Mr. Reese says, I think most of the drivers changed tires since they all had a pit time of about 50 seconds. Yeah, Mr. Reese, I'm going to go ahead and agree with you. I think we are assuming that they changed tires.
Yeah.
And we are going to go ahead and have a second round of pits. So we see some of the GT3 cars really jumping into the pits now as well.
Now, would you take tires in your second pit stop being a hypercar? Because that second pit stop is going to be considerably shorter in terms of fuel compared to that first pit stop. So would you take the gamble and take tires and maybe pit a bit earlier? Or would you say, oh, I'm not going to do that?
I think it really depends on the tire deg that they've been dealing with. So with the changes here, as we get a replay here,
George
coming through the bus stop, George Evgelides coming through here and just
We've seen a lot of drivers do that, and it's just you don't want to lose too much time, so you just hope the stewards don't see it, and you pray that the stewards don't see it, so they don't give you an off track. But you can kind of go wide there, and that allows you to not lose too much time, because his angle to that corner was kind of sharp. He was way over to the left-hand side. As we now see, the sun has disappeared, so we might well see some rain in about 4 minutes. Weather here, it is raining out on track. My time says that it is raining, and well, the weather forecast has come through. For the first time ever in the history of commentary, the commentator was right. It is raining. Ross Kidd is the driver in front of us. Roland de Bruin is the driver we're looking with at the moment. It's going to be rough now. We're going to see drivers pit for wet tires if the track gets wet enough. But now, this is the time, however, Michael, where the drivers are going to be on the edge. They're going to be tiptoeing now.
Yeah, we don't have any inter tires. We discussed that earlier before the race, so there's no inters. So in order for them to jump onto the wets, they really need the track to be extremely wet, to keep the tire temperatures cool. You got to run into the puddles, and that's what those tires are designed for and made for. Obviously, they're the wet tires. So not having that inter is really going to be a challenge, because they're going to have to be on the slicks as long as they possibly can before it really starts to be manageable in the wets. So it's definitely going to be a challenge, and these drivers are really, really, really going to have to tiptoe around the track on these slicks in the wet conditions.
Oh, you can see the amount of luck that drivers are putting in at the moment. The rears of the car getting unstable now, so we're on board with Roland de Bruin. Now, this is going to be tricky conditions for the man trying to break that all-time victory mark of 75. Oh, that is close to the outside for the BMW. The Cadillac pushing him all the way to the outside. Is he going to go for a move in the outside of Blanchimont? I was going to say don't do that, especially not in these conditions. He had a little look, however, the cheeky man that he is, Walter De Bruyn, had a little look if he could do it. Now the angle for the Cadillac is very tight to the last corner of the bus chicane. The exit is better for Walter De Bruyn. He's going to go to the outside of La Source. Going to brake later. It seems like that BMW with the four-wheel drive that it has, so much quicker through those corners, especially through the acceleration corners, where it's important that you have acceleration. And with that four-wheel drive, you have a significant advantage.
That's definitely going to be an advantage here in the rain. But jumping back here, Craig says in the chat, splash and dash for me if I'm making the second pit stop. It's probably a good choice. I really do think that it depends on the tire, the right tire compound. If they do have to go to the wets, obviously everybody's going to switch over to the wets. But if they don't have to, if this rain shower is just kind of going to be in and gone, and the track stays dry enough for the slicks, I think I agree with you. Just a little splash and dash there, but it really depends on the conditions, how they are, and then the tire deg. You know, we're not in these cars. We're not. Well, I'm not in these cars. I'm not driving them, so I don't know exactly how well these tires are hanging on in the GT3 cars and in the Hypercars as well, obviously. So it's gonna be very interesting to see what decisions are made. But right now, these conditions, while they're tough, still aren't wet enough for the wets.
Well, and that is well. I was at Genk about a week ago, and on Saturday, Friday, all dry. The drivers had only experience in the dries at the karting track of Genk. And then all of a sudden, Sunday morning, the heavens opened about an hour before the first heat race. And then all of a sudden, the drivers had to go out. It was changing conditions. The track was drying, as I think we have an AMG off the track. And that might be the car in P22. That might be Peter Meyer, who we see off track. That could have been Peter Meyer. I'm not sure, but Peter Meyer is definitely in. Well, he is in an AMG, Peter Meyer. We know that for sure. However, is it wet or is it dry tires for him? That's got to be the question. It was Peter Meyer, was it not? Yes, it was. So Peter Meyer, if he's on wets, he's definitely finding out that it is maybe a bit too early for that.
It's definitely going to be very slick for him, and he's going to have a hard time keeping his temperatures down. Obviously, you know, like we said, you really want puddles. You want water sitting on the track for these wets. So, jumping back to the chat here, David Anderson, rain, go away. Yeah, that rain is coming down pretty strong, but it's still just not wet enough for those to switch the compound.
Yeah, well, he's on soft still, so that is just tricky conditions. The conditions have got so far that even on softs, it's very tricky now. But still, having had that spin, oh, he's going to go for another one. No, he's not. For a second there, he thought he was going to go for another one, Michael. But he saves it. And how did he save that, especially in these conditions? Wow. On acceleration, you can see how tricky it is. You can see the lights on the dash flashing too for that Ferrari. Just to say that traction control is activated. You can see in the pit lane the puddles forming. Now this corner is going to be tricky. Definitely a lift now through there. This is on edge in complete optimal conditions already for these GT3 cars, but especially now with the rain coming down, it's definitely going to be a lift through there.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to lift off the coast a little bit. Obviously, you know, the braver they are, but the opportunity there for a massive spin and a massive crash. We've all seen, you know, incidents there coming out of a Rouge and into a Rodillion, and that's a big off right there, coming off the track there, as we have a Hypercar trying to make his way through the traffic. And Mike Booth has been off track, so we're going to get a replay here, see what happened there. That's... I think there we go. Coming through here. Lost the rear end.
Oh.
He's able to keep it out of the roll, though, so that's good. No damage there. Those tires aren't going to be happy, but there's no damage there.
That car was gone before the entry of Blanchimont. Now, Wade Hutchinson has just made a pit stop, and he is in second place of the Hypercar AM class. Now, if I look at Wayne Hutchinson, he is on rain tires, which will mean that he will be the first one to experience the rain tires. Is it going to be enough? Well, it's still about 5% rain out on track, so it's not heavy rain at all. but we're going to see what kind of lap times he's going to be able to set. We're going to keep an eye, compare him to the race to John Ewan, which he will be looking to at what Wayne Hutchinson is doing. Because if Wayne Hutchinson is quicker, we might well see John Ewan come into the pit lane too. He's in sector number 2. He wants to get these rain tires up to temp as quick as possible, because if he has them up to temp, it's of course going to provide him with even more grip. The lap time from him at the moment compared to John Ewan is, well, his first sector time is going to be slower because he came out of the pit lane. Second sector time, really the first sector where we can compare. A 1 minute and 3 seconds sector time in sector number 2 for John Ewan. Traffic though for Wayne Hutchinson. So we're going to take a look at where he will stack up, but this is now going to be crunch time.
Yeah, this is definitely where we're coming in. We're going to see these hypercars come in for their second pits. I think depending on how Wayne Hutchinson does here, like you said, we're gonna see some of these hypercars really make a decision. But 5% wet, I don't know if that's really enough. But we're under 20 minutes now, so it's going to be, you know, coming down to the end of the race here. So it's definitely going to be a lot of strategy calls that are. There's going to be some tough decisions that are going to be made here.
Here I've got something for you. A 1:07. So about 4 seconds slower for Wayne Hutchinson in that middle sector. But he's now catching up to the Acura, so it might well be time for rain tires. George Sancharides, who's just overtaken. And John Ewan is dropping back. He's in the pit lane. Everyone is in for rain tires. And everyone is making that last pit stop now. So Wayne Hutchinson, where is he going to come out? Where is John Ewan at the moment? He still is in pit lane. Hutchinson might cycle through to the front here. Remember, he is a lap down, so this is to unlap himself.
Definitely made the right call, though, it seems. He's able to unlap himself and get back on the lead lap here. And you're just really starting to see those puddles come down. So, and I think through a Rouge here,
that was close to
off.
Heart and mouth moment for Wayne Hutchinson. That was close, and like we said, that's not a corner when you want to have any sort of moment, especially not in the wet. I see the Ferrari of Magnus Dahlgren now. Magnus Dahlgren, I think, also on the wet tires. Has he taken tires? He's on dries, so that is why he's out in front. He has only taken fuel. Does he know something that we do not? Is it going to turn dry in the next couple of minutes? It is still raining on track, so he might be in big trouble. Let me see if I can pull up his timing. And he is on soft tires still. John Ewan is catching up. 7.5 seconds is the gap. And I don't think, Michael, that the lead is going to last long for Magnus Dahlgren.
No, he's definitely struggling out there. He's going to have to jump over to the wets. It's finally starting. You're seeing those puddles really start to build up on the track, so you're able to, you know, really trust those wets to stay in that correct tire temperature range. With 14 minutes left here, Brian Hall has gone off. We're going to go ahead and get a replay here real quick to see what happened with Brian. And yeah, just kind of fighting with traffic and just no grip there, just kind of losing it through.
The Acura behind that. I can see why the GT did that though. The GT wanted to go into the pit lane, so if the Hypercar overtakes him on the inside, I see the Peugeot have an off track again. This is Daniel Kirby, not having the best race so far. I may also having an off track at the top of Eau Rouge, I think. Oh no, oh no, oh no, the Hypercar, watch out.
That was close.
Traffic through there in the dry is already tricky, let alone in the wets. But Jamie Zalecki managed to get through. But like I said, Magnus Dahlgren at the moment seems to be gaining in the first couple of sectors, but he's into the pit lane. And that is confirmation to us, Michael, that wet tires is optimal at the moment.
Yep, that has definitely become the choice of tire. I think everybody is switching over to that. We follow along with John Ewan, and he's back in the lead. Obviously, he made his pit stop, switched over, and it looks like he's not really having too much trouble with these conditions. So we watch him come up through a Rouge here. Little bit of understeer.
Now, your whole kind of perspective of this race changes, Michael, because instead of trying to look for a dry line at the beginning of practice and qualifying and just getting into the groove at the beginning of this race, you are now going to look, well, where there are no puddles. So you might well take a completely different line, because as you can see, the inside and the outside, John Ewan, very tricky for him. But you're going to try and avoid the puddles as much as you can, because puddles can cause aquaplaning. And we both know if you aquaplane, you're going to be out of control of the car, which is something that is not going to be something nice, especially not in this weather. And if you aquaplane up Eau Rouge Radion, well, I can tell you one thing, there's no holding it at that point.
Yeah, no, you definitely, like you said, it's going to be the complete opposite line now. At practice and at the beginning of the race, you were trying to stay as close to the dry line as you possibly could, as we get a replay here. Adrian Rice having a moment here, coming out of Rivage and just losing the rear end, just getting a little too happy on the right pedal there.
Oh, he's going to spin it into the wall, too.
Spin it, yeah.
Oy.
Okay, so that's going to be our second DNF of the race.
Oh, no. It's tricky conditions there. It's tricky conditions out there, Michael. A lot of drivers I'm getting to here have been off track. So, tricky conditions out there. The drivers are going to have to be tiptoeing around. They're going to have to be concentrated for every sector, every corner they turn. And as you can see, John Ewan very comfortable at the moment in this weather. What you would say is that, especially in the wet with a Peugeot, it's going to be super tricky. But it seems like the Peugeot at the moment, one of the quickest cars out there. Timon Suvik in the Acura behind us, about what, 30 seconds back on John Ewan, about 32. So it's going to be really tricky for both of these drivers to try and tiptoe their way around as we look at in that case. He's had a little bit of an off. He has lost time. It's not the first time he's been off too. He's struggling a bit.
Yeah, this is definitely a tricky situation for these drivers. We've had quite a few offs here recently. We see another yellow flag popping up in Sector 2. We'll see if we figure out what happened there, and the flag is gone now. But yeah, no, these guys are really having a tough time keeping it on the track. As we see, almost going off there into the dirt, into the gravel. George Angelides, we're going to get a replay here of his off, and oh, yeah, loses the rear end there and into the wall.
That's a firewall, though, so that won't do as much damage as you think it does. But I think that car is fine, but it just came to an abrupt stop in the tire world. Brian Hall also off track at the top of Eau Rouge Radion. At the top of Radion. He can continue his way. However, Brian Hall has not had a race to remember, a race to forget. Let's put it like that for him. Tom Lane in P4. He has had a good race so far. He's catching Bradley Sellers for that last podium spot in the Porsche. Of course, Bradley in the BMW. And now, in the wet, four-wheel drive cars, they have a big and massive advantage.
Yeah, that's going to be an understatement and a half. Having a grip on all four wheels instead of just having the grip in the rear. You know, as soon as you kind of smash on the gas pedal coming out of a turn, that rear end just wants to throw itself around to begin with. And now you add in the fact that there's such little grip. It's just going to be such a challenge. So we see that Lamborghini getting out of the way of this battle here between Tom Lane and Bradley Sellers.
I don't think that getting out of the way was completely intentional. I think that Lamborghini just ran a bit wide, and it just so happened to be the case that Tom Lane and well, Sellers was coming through, so in the end it worked out fine. But yeah, if the cars would have already been there and they would have chosen the outside of the Lamborghini, then I think Tom Lane or either Bradley would have been in some trouble.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a real rough time for these drivers. Coming down to the bus stop chicane, he's too far back to make a move here under the braking zone. He's definitely got a good advantage there in mid-turn, but as soon as they come out, Bradley Sellers is just able to accelerate so much quicker out of the curves, out of the turns. And see coming down into first corner, the source.
A lot of drivers at the moment going off from our producer, we just got about 7-8 drivers that went off track. This is the Acura of Ross Smith. Wow, that was a sudden one. He just put the power down and the car said, no, I'm going to spin you around. Felipe Enrique also had an off track. It is Acura. These Acuras not liking the wet weather, it seems like. Simon Suvik also losing loads of the time to John Ewan and to Bradley. Stephen Miller in his McLaren.
Big hit.
Hard into the wall.
That's a big hit.
Well, race over for him. That was a big hit. No, he can't continue, but that was a big hit. Another Acura. Brian Hall, he's already had a race to forget, and again, just running wide through that first part of Radion.
Missouri's having an off here too. Just no grip on this track for these cars. I know they've all gone to the wet tire, but it just seems like the conditions have just... This is going to be Jason Whitehead here. Just kind of...
Yeah, this is the usual off track.
Yeah.
This is just, I think, to save. Instead of making a big correction, just taking that off track, take this away. However, he is in the pits, and he was in the pits before to take on wet tires. Now, is he going to change back? I don't think he's going to change back, is he?
No, I don't think he's going to change back. He might change to more wets, but I don't think he's changing to slicks. It's way too wet out there for slicks right now. And the fact that they don't have an intermediate tire to choose from, and the fact that the water's pooling all over the road, I just don't see that happening. Maybe a fresh set of wets, but I don't.
I can't really see why. You've made your last pit stop. You've taken your fuel, and you've taken your tires on. You have the correct tires for these conditions, and then you go into pit. Did he have a penalty? It's the only real reason I can see why you went into pit lane.
Yeah, we do know that there were quite a few drivers that had penalties. So, we're getting confirmation here from our producer James in the background. Jason Whitehead did have a penalty, so that's why he jumped into the pits.
Oh, there we go. Oh, around the outside! Wow, Bradley Sellers, you are a brave man in that BMW. He just drove around the outside of the GT on the fastest corner on the circuit. Or, well, one of the fastest. Blanchimont also a pretty quick one. But Eau Rouge Radion, a pretty quick one too, and a tricky one to overtake in the dry, and he just did it in the wet, Michael.
Yeah, that was definitely a brave move to send it on the outside, but got the move done. So, cheers to that. That was an awesome move, and I mean, in these conditions, that's a definitely a go for glory or go home type move.
Well, especially coming down to the last 5 minutes of this race, you kind of want to take a bit of risk. Now, if I quickly, because we don't have a lot of time with the conditions out on track, Tom Lane closing up on Bradley Sellers. The standings, the top three in the other server is Jeffrey Ellis in first, Angus Stong in P2, and Kyle Vessa in P3. They've had about 24 laps, which is the same we've had in this server too. So in terms of laps, we are exactly the same. Conditions exactly the same there too. Excuse me, we've had 26 laps in this server, so we are actually 2 laps ahead of server number 2. Bradley Sellers in P3. We just saw that he had a little bit of a moment coming out of P1. He's slowed down by that GT. Throw it to the inside. It's busy up ahead. Tom Lane can close up now. There's a GT, I think a Lamborghini up the road. Another Acura who's going to get out of the way. That's not finished, I think. Oh, George Angelides has gone round again. He's had a tough race too. And George Angelides P11. The gap to White was already quite big. And it just got even bigger. Back to the battle for that last podium position. Then Bradley Sellers had a Tom Lane. Tom Lane closed up through traffic. Blanchimont was a difficult point on the track for these drivers. Last lap around, it was pretty busy there. And to handle that with the spray in front of you too, you could see how late we could only see that move happening ahead of us.
Yeah, we're going to see Tom Lane really trying to get up on the back. This battle has been pretty much all race long between him and Sellers. He's going to take the inside here. He's going to go to the inside. It looks like he's going to have the move done. They're going side by side. Oh, contact, and that is, he backs out. He gives that place back, which I think is the right thing to do. That was a tough spot, and he definitely caused an issue.
I don't know. Yeah. I think Sellers is the one who needs to give that position because he eventually ran off track. There was enough room. I think Tomlin left him enough room to run that car or to run that car around the outside. He wasn't able to do so, and Bradley Sellers, rightly so, gives that position to Tom Lane. And Tom Lane, P3. And how, well, I think it doesn't really matter if it was intentional or not. In the end, I think it would have been the right decision for Bradley to give that position up. Tom left him enough room in the end. Bradley just ran a bit wide, and you know, some good racecraft from both drivers, and especially Bradley, to give that position back. And now in that Acura of his, or he's losing loads and loads of time. BMW, excuse me, the BMW M Hybrid. Bradley, Maya and Mazur are also back together. The 087 Mercedes AMG GT3 and the Ferrari 488 GT3 from Eugene Mazur, the number 6. They're back together for second and third in the GT3 AM class. This battle has been going on in the dry, changing conditions, qualifying, now into the wet. This battle basically has been going on for this whole evening, basically qualifying, practice, race, changing conditions, and one thing has always been the same, and that's the fact that Peter Meyer has been behind Eugene Mazur for so long now. He must be so tired of seeing the back of that Ferrari.
Yeah, it's definitely got to be frustrating when you know where you think that you have a little bit more pace in front of the car than the car in front of you, but you can't really make that move. Tricky conditions, there's only so many opportunities to really pass here. It's definitely got to be frustrating, but he's had a great race, and yeah, and we're gonna have another replay from George Angelidis, I think, here momentarily. He's just had another incident. Yep, here comes the replay. Yeah, poor George is definitely having a race to forget. Yeah,
he just seems to have trouble going back on the power from very slow corners. That acceleration, typical in the Acura of his. They're side by side. Are they going to run it side by side through Eau Rouge? Mazur is going to back off, and for the first time in a long, long while, Michael, it is Peter Meyer who is ahead of Eugene Mazur, and now it's a case of just trying to extend that gap and making sure he never ever sees the back of that Ferrari again in this race.
Yeah, definitely finally going to release him, so we'll see what kind of pace he has to try to, he's not going to have the time, but to try to chase down Becky as we're coming down here to the final couple moments. Yep, last lap right here, so we'll see how much quicker he is, but obviously there's not going to be enough time there for him to get anywhere near Becky, because Becky Eli is just absolutely just stunningly fast in that car. She is just absolutely dominating the GT3 AM class, and it's just extremely impressive what she's been able to do today. All season long.
To number 2, and that could well have been Bradley Sellers. I think it was Bradley Sellers off track. I saw his dot on the track map standing still, coming out of the first part. And he's lost loads and loads of time to the drivers ahead. Here we go. This was coming. This is like the first time. Well, we don't really know if that was the case, but he's coming across the line in P4. He had to give that one up, but you have to give it to this man, John Ewan. Changing conditions. It was a tricky, well, whole race survey for him. It has been tricky. Tricky conditions in qualifying. He was there. He was 1.4 seconds ahead, remember, going into this race in qualifying. 1.4 seconds. When have you last seen a driver being that dominant in technically a BOP class, where every car, it doesn't matter which manufacturer you're in. It's not like F1 where every manufacturer has to produce the quickest car to be the quickest. There's a BOP, so a balance of performance, which will mean that basically you get the balance to the slowest car of your class. And he's 1.4 seconds ahead of P2 in classic qualifying, which has been absolutely amazing. But John Ewan is going to write history in the VWS. He has got 2 more corners to go in terms of the bus stop, and then he's going to pick up the most wins overall. It's going to be win number 76 for John Ewan. He's going to come across the line. 1 last acceleration zone. He's going to write history in VWSC. Win number 76 for John Ewan. He's victorious at Spa-Francorchamps. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a new overall record holder in terms of overall wins in the VWSC. What a drive from John Ewan. Wayne Hutchinson also in the lead of the Hypercar AM class. Felipe Enrique has been leading for a long while there. But in the end, it only matters where you are when that checkered flag drops, and it was Wayne Hutchinson who handled the tricky conditions best. Wayne Hutchinson, in the end, is going to come through if he can complete this last corner successfully to come through and finish this race in first in his class. Wayne Hutchinson 10th overall, so not quite the 2nd place overall where he was last week. But for him, it's also going to be a class win across the line for Wayne Hutchinson. He's going to do it again. And win number 2 for him on the trot, and he wins again. Becchielli wins in the GT3 AM class, and in GT3 Pro class, it's Gutierrez who took the victory there. And well, what a drive from all race winners. Of course, tricky conditions out there, Michael, and it was never really a sealed deal for any of these drivers.
No, absolutely not. As we saw early on in the race with Daniel Kirby's incident with Mia Rose. And we see everybody just kind of out there just enjoying the wet weather now that they can kind of relieve a little bit of stress and just play in the rain. So great race by all of our winners. It's an absolute playground. You're correct there. And this has been such a great race.
They see a puddle and they want to jump in it. They're like little kids. Well, usually these cars have traction control, so that'll mean that you can't really do any donuts. So in the wet, that's of course a lot easier. But some victory donuts there for Becchielli. Norm Graaf, one of the last drivers on this track, still to finish. Coming, and for good measure, Norm Graaf just runs deep into the bus stop chicane. He's almost going to be overtaken by a GT3 on acceleration. He's going to take it. Peter Meyer, however, has lost that position against Eugene Mazur. I don't know why that happened, but one thing is for sure, Eugene Mazur has once again done it, and Peter Meyer is going to finish where he was looking at for so long in this race, behind the back of that Ferrari. He got past on the second to last lap, couldn't keep it though. I don't think we can get a replay of that in the short time that we have. But yeah, Eugene Mazur once again ahead of that AMG of Peter Meyer. Here we have the classification of this race. John Ewan, like we said, writes history in the VWSC, and he is now the person with the most wins overall in the Virtual World Sports Car Championship. John Ewan, take a bow for him. 76 wins overall. Timon Suvik in P2 ahead of Tom Lane in P3, rounding off the podium for the Hypercar Pro Class. Bradley Sutters in P4 ahead of Magnus Dahlgren in P4. Those two, it looks like, finished, well, on the same time. If I look on my timing screen, they indeed did. They finished alongside each other. There was nothing between them. It was literally 0.000 between those two. So both drivers have picked up 4th place. This is unique. We've never really seen this in the modern one. But Magnus Dahlgren and Bradley Sellers finishing, well, in P4 together. Walter O'Brien in P6 ahead of Norm Graaf in P7. Daniel Kirby in P8 and P9 for Ross Smith. Then the first of the Hypercar AM class, it is Hutchison who took the overall victory there ahead of Felipe Enrique in P2, rounding off that class. Only 2 Hypercar AM drivers this evening. Jason Whitehead in P11 ahead of George Angelidis in P13. Then the first of our GT3 Pro drivers, Johnny Gutierrez ahead of Becky Ellie in P15, our winner on the GT3 AM class. Brian Hall dropping down a lot in the end, managing to claw back up to P16. Brandon Johnson, P17. Jamie Zolecki in P18. That is the top three of the GT3 Pro class. So Brandon Johnson, Jamie Zolecki rounding off that the standings in the GT3 Pro class. Eugene Mazur and Peter Meyer rounding off the podium in the GT3 AM class in P19 and 20 overall, respectively. P21. There we go. Felipe Marazzi finishes in P21 ahead of Matt Base in P22. Vinicius Gonçalves in P23. Jamie Bowders in P24. James Walker, P25. JT Tammy finishing in P26. He looked quick. Couldn't quite, however, Michael, put that into a racing result. Mike Bose in P27. Adam Gray in P28. Vasilis Katarinakis in P29. Stephen Bose in P29. Stefan Miller in P31. Adrian Rice and Maya Rose not finishing this race. And for the first time, I think, only 2 DNFs at this race here in Spa. Franco, Sean. Let's go to our winner overall, because I can see him waiting patiently in the booth. John Ewan will drag him into the commentary booth. Here he is. John, welcome into the commentary booth.
Hello, guys.
John, first of all, congratulations on picking up that, historical win for you, because it was your 76th win overall. And you are now the record holder of overall wins.
Well, I don't know where you get that number, but I have probably more than that at CMS. But I decided to come and meet you guys finally in the booth. It was time for me, especially after Long Beach blunder that I threw away a win there with a silly accident. But here I am.
Well, it was tricky out there today. You were quick in qualifying, about 1.4 seconds ahead of the rest. What was your secret there?
Qualifying, I actually was almost same time at my last run as Mia, but I did cut a corner on just before starting the lap, and it said the message said that that lap and the next lap was not going to count. I was 0.6 faster, so it would have been 1:59.1, I think, just as Mia. But yeah, Dan obviously quicker than me as usual. But it was a good qualifying, yeah.
Yeah, and then of course you saw the two in front of you, Maya, together with one of the other Peugeot driver, Dan Kirby, going off. What were your thoughts at that point? Because it was a pretty high-speed accident.
I was not expecting that after Thursday, because that's almost exactly what happened with me and Dan going into turn one, Thursday's race. They took each other out. Well, I should say Mia took Dan out. I don't know what happened in this one, but I was not expecting. That was definitely a surprise. And I was lucky that they were both on each side of the road track, so I could go through.
Yeah, and then of course the changing conditions. Sorry, go ahead.
I have to admit, I did smile a little bit on the inside. It was another win giving to me on a silver platter, 2 races in a row. Yeah.
Well, I mean, at that point, the doors opened. Moses opened the sea for you, and you never really looked back. Also, the heavens opened with about 20 minutes to go in the race. When did you know it was the right time to switch to those wet tires?
Well, it started light rain. It was only 5%, I think, precipitation, and I had 5 laps to go for my next pit stop. So I decided to judge the grip level So first two laps were fine. Third lap was a little bit sketchy, and fourth and fifth laps before I came in, it was really slow. A lot of sliding, but kept it on track. And so doing the pit stop right on time and getting rain tires just really worked out for me. I was worried about an undercut from Brian and maybe a few others, but that was not the case. So it worked out perfect for me, I should say.
Yeah. Well, John, it's been amazing to have you in the booth. Congratulations on your victory, and well,
Thank you. Yeah.
it's been a great one. Anyone you want to shout out?
Um, yeah, there was a good effort from Brian. I think unfortunately BMW was not as suitable for this track. It's a high speed cornering, sweeping corners. Long Beach was their turn definitely, but Brian did well. And also the GT3 cars, they were really good at traffic, thanks to them. And yeah, and you guys, I'm sure you are always doing a good job in the booth, and thank you for your efforts.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
And
You and your overall winner here this evening at Spa-Francorchamps. Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Well, we will continue then with our winner in the GT3 AM class. And as always, Becky, we've had about 12 different names for your last name, but I think I got it right this week. Becky Ellie.
No.
Oh,
And hello.
no.
No, it's Ely. Just
Ely.
an
Yeah,
E
there we
and
go.
then Lee. You'll get there. You'll get there.
We'll get it right one day, Becky. I
One
promise
day.
we'll get
It's
it right
fine.
one day. Well, Becky, tell us how was your race, because it was changing conditions out there. And first of all, quali, you were once again miles quicker than P2 in the AM class.
Well, I mean, you say that, but I think the fastest was over in server 2. So that was Brendan. And I had a cheeky look at the server at the end of qualifying, and I think he went faster than me. So technically, not really a pole, but I mean, I'll take it anyway. It was the fastest lap I've ever done on the circuit. That is for sure. So it all worked out and went well, quali.
I mean, if there's one point where you want to do your fastest lap on the circuit, I mean, quali is a very good one. Then, of course, came the race, a dry start, and then all of a sudden going into rain. How was the start for you, and how did you transition into the rain period?
Yeah, the start was fine. Again, same as last time. I was like, I'll just follow JT. I couldn't quite keep up with him, but then I don't know what happened. Like, I imagine he disconnected or something. He just went off into a wall pretty much on a straight. So that was my person to follow gone, and I just did my own pace. Brandon Gant was keeping me honest the whole way through, and I just kept pushing. Really tiny bit of fuel saving here and there just to ease the tyres, because I wanted to do no tyre change. So I just took it a tiny bit easier to make them last, be faster in the long run. And then the rain started as I left the pits. So I did about 3 or 4 laps and then dived in. But if I was 1 lap later pitting, I could have done a 1 stop. So a bit annoyed about that, but it's the way the cookie crumbles, isn't it?
Yeah, well, of course, strategy is a thing that all of the drivers really were struggling with, and even we up here in the booth were thinking, well, when is it going to rain? We got promised rain by the weather forecast at the beginning of the race, and then all of a sudden the sun came poking through. We were like, okay, this rain must be far away then, but all of a sudden the sun was gone and the heavens opened. So, at what point did you kind of feel that you had to go onto the wet tires, because that change, of course, is an important one?
When the rain picked up, because it was like really light drizzle, and then suddenly it got a bit heavier, and the moment it got a bit heavier, I was like, okay, this is probably here to stay. I'm diving into the pits, and it worked out well because Brandon didn't pit that lap, and then he came out about 7 seconds further down the road. So I think I pitted just at the right time. Maybe even a lap earlier would have been right, but I was really hoping the rain would stop. So, but yeah, it just went well. I like spa in the rain. It's really good fun sliding the car around.
Yeah, well, we could see you do loads of that, and you seem in pretty good control of the car. Becky, thank you for your time, and congratulations on your LMGT3 AM victory.
Thank you very much. Good luck remembering my name.
Yeah, I did. Becky, last question. Anyone you want to give a shout out to?
As usual, I'd like to give a shout out to George and just everyone in the Storm Gang, because the cars are so good, and everyone in CMS and yourselves, because it's such a professional outfit, and it makes it great. I love watching the race back, and I love that it is on in the first place, and everyone's so friendly. So it is a fantastic series to race in.
Yeah. Well, Becky, once again, winner of the LMGT3 AM class. Thank you for your time and congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, Michael, all in all, I think some pretty happy drivers there with their victories. And all in all, I think we can say it was a race that had everything.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging conditions. Spa, it can change at a moment's notice. So definitely a great race. These drivers really were able to manage very well the tricky conditions, and it was just a blast to be here with you today.
Yeah, of course, it's always the blast in the rain, especially changing conditions. To see the drivers kind of figure out what lines are best, especially when it happens towards the end of the race. All drivers, all teams are scrambling to try and make that best decision. And it's a chance usually for drivers that are a little bit further down the field to try and make that legendary decision to go on the tires on the right time. And they can all of a sudden pick up a amazing victory for them. But I think that this has been it, Michael, for us this evening. Sum it up for me in one sentence.
Just tricky conditions, great racing, blast to watch this race today. I'm glad I was here.
There we go. Michael, thank you for being alongside me. James, of course, our American friend, thank you for being in the position to do all behind the scenes, the man that you don't hear, but without him, we wouldn't have had a broadcast this evening. And of course, thank you to all watching this evening. It's very much appreciated. Thank you all for hopping into the chat and, being here with us to have a look at all these drivers during the changing conditions, having some trouble, sometimes some good decisions in these tricky conditions. This has been it then for the VWSC, at Spa-Francorchamps. Next time out, of course, before we go anywhere, of course, remember that next time we will be at Le Mans, the 4.8 hours, 3rd of June. Mark it in your calendar. That is going to be an amazing race. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything of it. And if you do so, turn on that bell to get all the notifications through when we do go live. This has been it for the VWC, the Virtual World Sports Car Championship from Spa-Francorchamps. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe. Bye-bye.